Single mom florist delivers wrong flowers to hospital room. The grieving billionaire asks her to stay. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. The hospital room smelled like lilies and endings. Melody Foster pushed through the heavy door, her arms full of balloons that bumped against the frame, cheerful yellows and pinks that screamed celebration. Her delivery van was double-parked outside with hazards blinking, and she had 3 more stops before Sam's school let out. No time for mistakes today. But the address on her phone definitely said 412. She looked up, and her breath caught. A man sat alone by the window, silhouetted against the grey Boston sky. White lilies crowded every surface: the windowsill, the nightstand, the small table near the door. Sympathy cards lined the walls, like soldiers standing guard over sorrow. The room felt like a museum, beautiful, expensive, and utterly lifeless. This was not a birthday party. "Oh, God," Melody whispered, "I am so sorry. I have the wrong room. I'm so sorry." Her face burned as she fumbled with the balloons, trying to back out without knocking over the flowers that someone had clearly arranged with such painful care. One balloon escaped and floated toward the ceiling, its metallic "congratulations" catching the light and mocking the quiet grief that filled the space. Wait. The word was soft, almost hoarse, but it stopped her completely. She turned. The man was looking at her now, really looking. And something in his face made her forget about her double-parked van, forget about her next delivery, forget about everything except the raw need in his eyes. "Please," he said, "don't go. Not yet." Melody's hand shook on the door handle. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to let this man grieve in private, to pretend she had never burst into his carefully controlled sadness with her absurd balloons and flustered apologies. But she had seen that look before. In her own mirror 3 years ago, when her father died and everyone kept saying she should move on. The look of someone drowning in sympathy but starving for something real. "I'm Melody," she heard herself say. "I own a flower shop. Obviously." She gestured at her dirt-stained apron with its embroidered logo, "Bloom and Grow." "I'm really sorry about all of this. Caleb," his voice was steadier now, "Caleb Beaumont, and don't apologize. This is the first real thing that's happened in this room in 4 months. He stood, and she noticed how tall he was. 6 feet at least, with grey hair that looked premature on a face that couldn't be much past 45. His suit was expensive but rumpled, and when he moved closer, she saw a wedding ring hanging on a chain around his neck. 4 months, he had said. "Oh, your flowers," Caleb continued, nodding toward her balloons and the bright bouquet she'd been clutching. "They're wrong, completely wrong for this place." He smiled, and it didn't quite reach his eyes, but it was trying. "I like them." Melody glanced at the suffocating whiteness surrounding them. "These lilies are beautiful. These lilies are a funeral." The words came out flat. "Everyone sends lilies, white roses, orchids, all very appropriate, all very dead." She understood then. Not just that someone had died, but that Caleb Beaumont was being buried alive under the weight of everyone's appropriate condolences. "Lilies represent restored innocence," Melody said quietly, "but they also represent death and rebirth. The Chinese give them to new mothers. It's all in how you see them. How do you see them?" She considered the question, considered him, considered the fact that she really needed to get back to her van but couldn't seem to make her feet move. "I see flowers that belong in a moment, not a life," she said finally. "They're beautiful, but they're not meant to stay. They're meant to mark something and then let you move forward." Caleb's jaw worked. "What if you're not ready to move forward?" Then you fill your space with something that reminds you that life keeps growing anyway, even when you're not ready. Especially then. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence where two people who don't know each other suddenly understand something important without needing more words. A phone buzzed. Melody jumped, breaking the spell. Her screen showed Rosa's name. "Where are you? Mrs. Chen is here for her anniversary arrangement." Reality crashed back. Sam, the shop, her double-parked van. "I really do need to go," Melody said, but she found herself pulling out one of her business cards, plain white with green lettering, corners slightly bent from living in her apron pocket. "But if you ever want flowers that don't feel like a funeral, we're in Jamaica Plain. Bloom and grow." Caleb took the card, his fingers brushing hers for just a second. His hands were warmer than she expected. "Thank you, Melody." She nodded, gathered her wayward balloon, and somehow made it to the door. But before she could leave, his voice reached her one more time. "What would you bring here, if you could replace all of this?" She turned, studying the room with a florist's eye. "Daffodils," she said without hesitation. "Yellow tulips. Maybe some blue irises. Things that face the sun even when everything feels dark. Things that come back every spring, no matter how cold the winter was." "Things that come back," he repeated softly. Melody left before she could say anything else. Before she could ask why, she felt like something important had just happened in a hospital room full of lilies and one ridiculously out-of-place congratulations balloon. She was halfway to her van when she realized she'd given him her personal cell number, not the shop's. It was written in her own handwriting on the back of the card, a habit from the early days when she couldn't afford a business line. She should go back, fix the mistake, but when she glanced up at the window, Caleb was standing there, holding her card, looking at it like it might contain answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. And Melody drove away, telling herself that wrong deliveries happened all the time, telling herself that she'd probably never hear from him again, telling herself that the flutter in her chest was just adrenaline from being late, telling herself all the lies that people tell when they're not quite ready to admit that their life just changed direction. The coffee maker gurgled to life at 5:15 in the morning, filling Melody's small kitchen with the only sound louder than her own thoughts. She moved through her routine on autopilot, measuring grounds, filling the water reservoir, setting out Sam's cereal bowl for when he woke in an hour. Outside the window of her Jamaica Plain apartment, Boston was still dark, but the streets had that pre-dawn energy that Melody had always loved. Delivery trucks rumbling past, the smell of bread from the bakery 2 blocks over, the city stretching and yawning before the real chaos began. She should have been thinking about Mrs. Chen's anniversary arrangement, about the wedding order due Friday, about the leak in the shop's back sink that she couldn't quite afford to fix yet. Instead, she kept seeing a man in a room full of white lilies, asking her what she'd bring to replace them. "Stop it," she muttered to herself, pulling cream from the refrigerator. The carton was lighter than she'd thought. Enough for today, maybe tomorrow. Add it to the list. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it too quickly, heart doing something stupid, but it was just Rosa. "Came in early, prepping the Morrison funeral spray. See you at 7. Melody typed back a quick thanks, ignoring the disappointment that settled in her stomach. Why would he call? Why would a man like Caleb Beaumont? Because she'd looked him up last night, unable to help herself, and found pages of search results about Beaumont Capital Partners, about his late wife Elizabeth, who'd been some kind of cancer researcher, about a net worth that made Melody's head spin. Why would someone like that call a florist from Jamaica Plain who'd stumbled into his grief by accident? "Mom!" Sam stood in the hallway, his dark hair sticking up in 7 different directions, his SpongeBob pajamas 2 inches too short at the ankles. 7 years old and already growing out of everything she bought him. "Hey, baby, you're up early." Had a dream. He climbed into her lap, all elbows and knees, and that particular little boy smell of sleep and soap. About Dad. Melody's chest tightened. Marcus, of course. Always Marcus. Even now, even after 5 years of divorce and a life that had clearly moved on without them. A good dream or a bad dream? Sam was quiet for a long moment. Just a dream where he came to my soccer game. But when I looked for him in the crowd, he wasn't there anymore. She held her son closer, feeling the familiar helplessness that came with trying to explain adult failures to a child who deserved so much better. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's okay. You're always there." He pulled back, looking at her with eyes that were too old for 7. "Are we poor, Mom?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "What? No." "Why would you ask that?" "Because Tommy's mum said we must be if you can't afford to hire help at the shop. And because my shoes have tape on them." He pointed to his sneakers by the door, where Melody had carefully patched a split seam rather than buying new ones she couldn't afford until next month. "Baby!" She cupped his face in her hands. "We're not poor, we're careful. There's a difference. And those shoes work perfectly fine, don't they?" He nodded, but she could see the uncertainty in his expression, the awareness that their life was different from his classmates' lives, that his mum came home with dirt under her fingernails and counted coins at the kitchen table after he went to bed. "Tell you what," Melody said, making a decision she'd regret when the credit card bill came. "After school today, we'll go get you new shoes, the kind you've been wanting, with the lights in the heels." Sam's face lit up. "Really? Really?" She kissed his forehead, breathing in the scent of her child. The best thing she'd ever created, better than any flower arrangement, any business plan, any dream she'd ever had. "Now go get ready for school. I'll make you pancakes." After he bounded off, chattering about light-up shoes, Melody sat at her small kitchen table and did what she did every morning. She opened her budget spreadsheet on her phone and looked at the numbers that never quite added up the way she needed them to. Rent, due in 12 days. She had it, barely. Van payment, due in 15 days. Tight, but manageable if the Hartford wedding came through. Van repairs, the check engine light had been on for 3 weeks. Ignoring it for now, Sam's field trip, $68. She'd been saving quarters in a jar, was up to $42.50. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Rosa. "Order just came through. Weekly flowers for Beaumont Capital Partners. High-end address in Beacon Hill. Wants arrangements that feel alive. Girl, is this your hospital man?" Melody stared at the message, then at the order notification that popped up on her shop's system. The address was definitely Beacon Hill. The amount, her breath caught. The amount would cover Sam's field trip, the van repairs, and the past-due water bill she'd been dodging. Her fingers hovered over her phone. This was business. Just business. Rich people ordered flowers all the time, but she knew it wasn't just business. "Arrangements that feel alive," he'd requested. She thought about daffodils, yellow tulips, blue irises, things that faced the sun. She thought about a man holding her business card like it might save him. "Rosa," she typed back. "I'll take the delivery myself." Then she closed her budget spreadsheet, woke up Sam to get him ready for school, and tried very hard not to hope for things that women like her didn't get to have. But when she was in the shower, water running loud enough that Sam couldn't hear, she let herself smile. Just for a moment. Just enough to remember what hope felt like. Beacon Hill looked like it had been transplanted from a different century. All brick townhouses and gas-lit street lamps and an old money quietness that made Melody hyper-aware of her rattling van. She checked the address 3 times before parking, afraid of being wrong again. But the brass numbers on the elegant building confirmed it. This was Caleb Beaumont's home. The doorman looked at her the way doormen always looked at service people. Polite but dismissive, his eyes sliding past her to check if anyone more important was approaching. Melody had learned not to take it personally years ago, but today it stung a little more than usual. Flower delivery for Mr. Beaumont. Service entrance is around back. He asked for personal delivery to his apartment. The doorman's eyebrows rose slightly, but he picked up the phone and called up. Whatever response he got made his professional mask slip for just a second into something like surprise. Of course. 12th floor. Apartment B. The elevator was the kind with mirrors on all sides, and Melody spent the ride up trying not to look at herself, at her practical ponytail, her clean but faded jeans, her work boots that no amount of polish could make elegant. She'd brought tulips in shades of pink and gold, irises the color of a clear sky, and daffodils that seemed to hold sunshine in their petals. Living flowers. Hopeful flowers. She hoped he'd understand. The elevator doors opened directly into a private hallway with only 2 doors. Before she could knock, one opened. Caleb stood there in jeans and a grey sweater, and Melody's first thought was that he looked different without the suit. Younger, more uncertain, more human. Her second thought was that his apartment behind him looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that probably cost more than her van, art on the walls that she recognized from somewhere. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice was so naked it made her heart ache. "You ordered flowers. I ordered an excuse to see you again." The honesty startled her into silence. She'd expected. What? Polite distance? Rich person games? Not this direct admission that he'd manufactured a reason for her presence. "That's an expensive excuse," she managed. "Worth it." He stepped back. "Please, come in. I promise I'm not trying to be inappropriate. I just wanted to see you, to thank you properly. The other day, you gave me the first real conversation I've had in months." Melody hesitated on the threshold, very aware of the line she was about to cross. Professional distance, appropriate boundaries, all the rules she'd learned about not confusing clients' gratitude with genuine connection. But Sam's field trip was paid for because of this order. And there was something in Caleb's face that looked like her own reflection from 3 years ago, that desperate need for someone to treat you like a person instead of a tragedy. She stepped inside. The apartment was stunning and sterile. Everything perfectly placed, nothing out of order, not a single sign that anyone actually lived here. The only color in the entire massive space came from the white lilies. Still there, still dying, still making the place feel like a mausoleum. "It doesn't feel like anyone lives here," Melody said, then immediately regretted her bluntness. "I'm sorry. That was rude." "It's honest." Caleb took her flowers, her living, bright, hopeful flowers, and looked at them like she'd brought him something precious. "You're right. I've been existing here, not living. There's a difference." She watched him search for a vase, opening cabinets in his spotless kitchen until he found one. Crystal, expensive and somehow sad in its unused perfection. When he filled it with water, she couldn't help herself. She took it from him gently. "Let me. It's what I do." And there, in Caleb Beaumont's Beacon Hill kitchen, Melody arranged the flowers she'd brought, cutting stems at angles, removing lower leaves, placing each bloom with the care she gave to all her work. But this felt different. This felt like she was creating something more than an arrangement. This felt like she was offering hope to someone who'd forgotten what it looked like. "Tell me about them," Caleb said quietly. "The language." "What do they mean?" Melody's hands stilled. "You really want to know?" "I want to understand how someone can look at flowers and see more than just decoration." So she told him about how daffodils meant new beginnings, and pink tulips meant care and affection, and blue irises meant hope and faith, about how the Victorians had created an entire language from blooms because sometimes feelings were too complicated for words. "What about the lilies?" he asked, gesturing toward the dying white arrangements. What do they mean? Restored innocence. The soul at peace. She met his eyes. They're beautiful, Caleb, but they're not for the living room of someone who's still here. They're for closure, for saying goodbye. His jaw tightened. I'm not ready to say goodbye. Then maybe it's time to say hello to something else. Not instead of... Alongside, they stood in his kitchen, the morning light streaming through his massive windows, and Melody felt the weight of what she was really saying. Not about flowers, about grief, about permission to keep living even when someone you loved was gone. I lost my dad 3 years ago, she said softly. Heart attack. 1 minute he was there, the next he just wasn't. And everyone kept telling me I needed to move on, get over it, be strong for Sam. But I didn't want to move on. Moving on felt like forgetting. Yes, the word came out rough. Exactly that. But someone told me, my sister, actually, that moving forward isn't the same as moving on. That I could carry him with me and still keep walking. That memory doesn't require standing still. Caleb's hand came up to touch the wedding ring on the chain around his neck. Her name was Elizabeth. Everyone called her Liz. She died 4 months ago. Cancer. I'm so sorry. Everyone's sorry. Everyone's been very sorry. Very appropriate. Very... He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm drowning in sorry, Melody. In sympathy casseroles and therapy suggestions, and people who look at me like I might shatter if they say the wrong thing. What do you need them to say? He looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt seen in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. I don't know. But when you walked into that hospital room with your ridiculous balloons, it was the first time in 4 months that someone treated me like I was still a person, not a widower, not a tragedy, just someone who'd had a weird moment in his day. It was a pretty weird moment, Melody agreed, and was rewarded with a real smile. The smile transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter, like a shadow lifting. And Melody's heart did something dangerous in her chest, something she absolutely could not afford to feel. The apartment door opened without warning, and a woman's voice called out, "Caleb, darling, I've brought lunch because I know you're not eating properly," and the woman who appeared in the kitchen doorway was 70 and elegant in that way that only old Boston money could manage. Perfectly coiffed white blonde hair, designer pantsuit, pearls that probably cost more than Melody's van. Her eyes swept over the scene, Caleb and Melody standing close in the kitchen, the bright flowers on the counter, Melody's work clothes and dirty hands. "Oh," the woman said, and entire volumes of judgment lived in that single syllable. "I didn't realize you had company." "Mother," Caleb's voice went formal. "This is Melody Foster. She owns Bloom and Grow, the florist shop. Melody, my mother, Margaret Beaumont. Mrs. Beaumont." Melody extended her hand, but Margaret's gaze went to the dirt under Melody's nails, and her handshake was brief and cool. "How lovely. Caleb, darling, you don't need to personally meet with vendors. That's what services are for." The word vendors landed like a slap. Melody felt her face heat, felt the familiar shame of being reminded exactly where she stood in the social hierarchy. She'd known this was a mistake, known that Caleb's world and hers didn't intersect except through service entrances and professional distance. "Melody isn't a vendor, Mother." Caleb's voice went quiet, but firm in a way that made Margaret's perfectly plucked eyebrows rise. "She's a guest." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Margaret looked between them, clearly recalculating, clearly disapproving, but years of good breeding kept her from saying whatever she was actually thinking. "Well, I'll just set this lunch in the kitchen then. Caleb, we need to discuss the foundation gala next month. You're expected to attend." "I'll think about it." "You're on the board, dear. It's not optional." Margaret's smile was steel wrapped in silk. Miss Foster, how nice to meet you. I'm sure you need to get back to your shop." It was a dismissal, a clear, unmistakable dismissal from a woman who'd probably perfected the art of putting people in their place before Melody was born. Of course. Melody gathered her empty buckets, desperate to escape the tension that had suddenly filled the beautiful apartment. "Mr. Beaumont, I hope you enjoy the arrangement." "Melody, wait." Caleb followed her to the door, and she could feel Margaret's eyes on them, watching, judging, finding her wanting. "I'm sorry about that. My mother is protective." "It's fine. I understand." And she did. She understood perfectly. She was the help, the flower girl, someone to arrange the blooms and leave through the service entrance where she belonged. "It's not fine. She had no right to speak to you that way." But Melody was already in the elevator, watching Caleb's troubled face disappear as the doors closed. She made it to her van before the tears started. Angry tears, humiliated tears, and underneath them, something that hurt worse. For a moment there, in his kitchen, she'd forgotten. She'd let herself imagine that the way he looked at her, the way he listened to her, meant something beyond a lonely man grateful for a kind word. But Margaret Beaumont had reminded her of the truth. Melody Foster was from Jamaica Plain, not Beacon Hill. She raised a 7-year-old in a 2-bedroom apartment and counted quarters for field trips. She was nobody's guest. She was the florist, and she needed to remember that. Her phone vibrated at 3:17 in the morning, pulling Melody from a dream she couldn't quite remember. She grabbed it reflexively, heart pounding with the panic that all single mothers knew. That middle-of-the-night terror that something had happened to their child. But Sam was breathing softly in his room down the hall, and the message on her phone was from an unknown number. "I hope this isn't inappropriate. I couldn't sleep. I wanted to tell someone about Elizabeth, and you're the only person who doesn't immediately look like they've been punched when I say her name." Melody stared at the words. Sleep evaporating. She should delete it, should ignore it, should maintain the professional distance that Margaret Beaumont had so clearly defined 3 days ago. Instead, she typed, "I'm awake. Tell me about her." The reply came quickly, as if he'd been waiting. She was an oncology researcher. Brilliant, funny, loved terrible puns. We met at a charity gala where she was presenting her work. I was just there to write a check. Another message, she called me out for checkbook philanthropy, said if I really cared, I'd volunteer my time, not just my money. So I did. She made me work in a soup kitchen for our first date. I'd never been to one before. Melody smiled in the darkness of her room, imagining a younger Caleb Beaumont in an apron, probably completely out of his element. She typed, "Did you last the whole shift?" "Barely. I was terrible at it." But she laughed at me, not at the work. There's a difference. She had this way of seeing through my armor, I guess. The wealth, the background, all of it. She just saw me, and she liked what she saw anyway. She sounds wonderful. She was. She grew up working class, earned scholarships all through school, made me understand things I'd never had to think about, made me better. Melody's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. This was intimate. Too intimate for 3 a.m. texts with a client, but she couldn't seem to stop herself from asking, what happened? I mean, I know she died, but pancreatic cancer, stage 4 by the time they found it. We had 13 months from diagnosis to... He didn't finish the sentence. I spent that year managing her death, researching hospitals, finding specialists, organizing clinical trials. I was so busy being efficient that I forgot to just be with her. I'm sure she knew you were trying to help. Did she, or did she need something I couldn't give her? Toward the end, she asked me to just sit with her, not plan, not problem solve, just sit. And I couldn't do it. Every minute of silence felt like wasted time, time we could have been using to fight. You were scared. I was a coward. I treated her illness like a business problem, something to be managed and solved. And when I couldn't solve it, when she kept getting worse no matter how much money I threw at the problem, I shut down, became clinical, distant. Melody's heart ached for him, for Elizabeth, for the peculiar loneliness of being with someone who couldn't quite reach you when you needed them most. Is that what you meant when you said you failed her? I loved her. God, I loved her. But I didn't know how to show it without trying to fix everything. And now she's gone, and I can't tell her I'm sorry. I can't ask her what she needed from me. I can't do anything except stand in a room full of sympathy flowers and pretend I'm grateful. Melody looked at her phone, at this raw confession from a man she barely knew, and made a decision. She called him instead of texting. He answered on the first ring. Melody. Hi. Her voice was soft, conscious of Sam sleeping down the hall. I just thought, sometimes typing isn't enough. Thank you for calling, for not thinking I'm completely losing my mind. You're not losing your mind. You're grieving. There's a difference. They were quiet for a moment, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence where two people who don't know each other very well suddenly understand something important without needing to fill the space with words. Tell me about your father, Caleb said finally. You mentioned him the other day. So Melody did. She told him about Richard Foster, who'd worked construction for 35 years and always had dirt under his nails, about how he'd taught her to appreciate flowers because they were the one beautiful thing in his hard life, about how he'd saved for months to help her buy her shop, about how he'd died before he could see her succeed. I never got to tell him thank you, she admitted. Not properly. I was so busy trying to keep the business afloat, trying to raise Sam alone after Marcus left, Dad would call, and I'd be short with him. Say I was too busy, promise to call back later. But you didn't. Not enough. And then he was gone, and all I had left were the missed calls on my phone and the guilt of knowing I'd wasted the time we had. That's what keeps me up at night, Caleb said quietly. All the wasted time, all the moments I spent planning instead of being present. So what do we do with that? The guilt, the regret? I don't know. Everyone says I need to forgive myself, but how do you forgive yourself for failing someone you loved? Melody didn't have an answer. She just listened as Caleb talked, about Elizabeth's laugh, about the way she'd loved terrible reality TV shows, about how she'd been impatient with pretense and fiercely protective of people she loved, about how the last thing she'd said to him was, "Stop managing my death and just hold my hand." And he talked about the letter Elizabeth had left for him, sealed in an envelope marked, "When you're ready to love again." I can't open it, he confessed. What if she's disappointed in me? What if she knew, even then, that I'd fail her? Or, Melody said gently, what if she's giving you permission? What if she loved you enough to want you to be happy? They talked until the sky outside Melody's window started to lighten, about loss and guilt and the weird, hard work of surviving the people you loved, about how grief made you feel crazy and whether that was normal, about small things too, and favorite seasons, coffee preferences, childhood dreams. At one point, Sam called for water and Melody had to put Caleb on hold. When she came back, he was still there, waiting. "You're a good mum," he said. "How would you know? You haven't even met Sam. I can hear it, in the way you talk about him, in the way you got up without hesitation when he called. Elizabeth and I, we'd talked about kids, but then she got sick, and I'm sorry. Don't be, just thank you for tonight, for letting me be human instead of appropriate." "Any time," Melody said, and meant it. After they hung up, she sat in her dark kitchen, phone still warm in her hand, and wondered what she was doing. This was dangerous territory. This man was grieving his wife. He was lonely and vulnerable and probably just grateful for someone who'd listen without judgment. She couldn't afford to confuse his need for connection with anything else. Couldn't afford to hope for things that women from Jamaica Plain didn't get. But when her phone buzzed one more time with a simple "thank you for existing," she let herself smile. Just for a moment. Just enough to remember that sometimes, at 3 in the morning, honesty felt like intimacy even when you knew better. The invitation arrived on Thursday, hand-delivered to her shop by a courier in a suit nicer than anything Melody owned. Rosa signed for it, then brought it to Melody with her eyebrows doing gymnastics. "Girl, what have you been doing?" Melody opened the heavy cardstock envelope, and her heart started doing complicated things in her chest. It was an invitation to the Children's Hospital Charity Gala, black tie, Four Seasons Hotel, next Saturday evening. And clipped to it was a handwritten note. "I need to go. I'm on the board. But I don't want to go alone. Please come. Bring Sam if you'd like. I'll send a car, no pressure, but I'd really like you to be there. Caleb." "Oh, honey." Rosa peered over her shoulder. "This is fancy. This is Beacon Hill fancy. You going?" "I can't. Look at this thing. Black tie. I don't own anything remotely appropriate for black tie. So we get you something appropriate." "With what money, Rosa? I can't afford a gown, and Sam would need something nice too." "And what am I supposed to do? Show up at a charity ball full of people like Margaret Beaumont and pretend I belong there?" Rosa crossed her arms. "First of all, you do belong wherever you choose to be. Second, your sister Jen works at that fancy boutique. She can get you something. Third, this man wants you there, not because you're the help, because he likes you." "He doesn't like me like that. He's grieving. He's lonely. I'm just inconvenient." "You keep telling yourself that, Mika, but I've seen the way you smile when you think I'm not looking, and I've seen the orders that keep coming from Beacon Hill, weekly flowers, always arrangements that feel alive, always with notes asking how you are." Melody wanted to argue, but Rosa was right. Caleb had been ordering flowers every week, and they'd been texting, not the middle-of-the-night confessions anymore, but small things throughout the day. Pictures of arrangements, complaints about his mother, updates on Sam's school projects. It felt like friendship. It felt like more than friendship. And that terrified her. What if I go and make a fool of myself? What if his whole world sees exactly what his mother saw, that I'm the flower girl from Jamaica Plain who has no business being there? Then they're fools. And you come home and we eat ice cream and mock their bad taste. But what if you don't go? What if you spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened if you'd been brave enough to say yes? Sam chose that moment to burst through the shop door, school backpack bouncing, face bright with 7-year-old excitement. "Mom, guess what? There's a science fair, and I want to do a project about how flowers grow, and can we use flowers from the shop?" "Of course, baby." She pulled him into a hug, breathing in the scent of playground and sunshine. "Tell me all about it." But as Sam chatted about photosynthesis and whether sunflowers really followed the sun, Melody's eyes kept drifting to the invitation sitting on her counter. Black tie, the Four Seasons. A world so far from hers that it might as well be another planet. And yet, that evening, after she'd closed the shop and picked up Thai food for dinner, after Sam had finished his homework and was building with Legos in the living room, Melody called her sister. "Jen, I need a favor." An hour later, her sister was at the apartment with an armful of dresses from the boutique where she worked. "These are samples. Boss said you could borrow one for the event. But Mel, you have to tell me everything. Who is this guy? When did you start dating a billionaire?" "I'm not dating anyone. He's just a friend." Friends don't send cars to charity galas. Melody tried on dresses while Jen and Sam gave commentary. Too tight. Too long. Too much cleavage. Finally, she stepped out in an emerald silk that made her eyes look impossibly green, and her usual exhaustion seem like elegant mystery. "That one," Sam said definitively. "You look like a princess. You look like someone who belongs at a fancy ball," Jen corrected, "because you do belong. Remember that, okay? You're not crashing. You're invited." But when Saturday arrived and Melody was standing in her small bathroom, applying makeup with shaking hands, she didn't feel like someone who belonged. She felt like Cinderella, and any minute now, her pumpkin would show up and everyone would remember she was just the girl who arranged their flowers. Sam was vibrating with excitement in his thrift store suit, navy blue and only slightly too big. Rosa had offered to watch him, but Sam had looked so hopeful when Melody mentioned maybe bringing him that she couldn't say no. The car Caleb sent was ridiculous. Black and gleaming and driven by a man who called her ma'am and opened the door like she was someone important. Sam's eyes were huge. "Mom, is this real? Are we really going to a palace?" "It's a hotel, baby. A really fancy hotel. And we're going to be on our best behavior, okay? Good manners, inside voices. Is Mr. Beaumont going to be there? The one you've been texting?" "I'm not." "How do you know about that?" Sam gave her the look that 7-year-olds gave when adults were being ridiculous. "You smile at your phone now? You didn't used to." The Four Seasons was everything Melody had feared. Glittering chandeliers and people in designer gowns and tuxedos that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Women dripping with jewelry that could have paid for Sam's college. Men whose confident posture spoke of never having worried about money in their entire lives. She was going to be sick. But then Caleb was there, coming through the crowd, and the relief on his face when he saw her was so genuine that some of her panic subsided. "You came." He took her hands, and she was absurdly grateful that she'd scrubbed the dirt from under her nails. "Thank you. You look beautiful." "And you must be Sam." He knelt down to Sam's level, which immediately won points. Adults who treated kids like small humans were rare. "Hi, Mr. Beaumont. Mum says you send her flowers." "I do. Your mum makes the best arrangements in Boston." "Are you her boyfriend?" "Sam!" Melody wanted to die, but Caleb just smiled. "I'm her friend. Is that okay with you?" Sam considered this with all the seriousness of a small person making an important judgment. "Okay. But if you're mean to my mum, I'll be mad at you." "That's fair. If I'm mean to your mum, you should be mad at me." And just like that, Sam was charmed. He slipped his hand into Caleb's free hand, and the three of them walked into the ballroom like they belonged together. Like maybe, just for tonight, fairy tales were real. The ballroom sparkled with 1,000 tiny lights, and Melody tried not to stare at everything, like the outsider she felt herself to be. But it was hard not to notice. The ice sculptures shaped like swans, the champagne fountain, the string quartet playing in the corner, the sheer wealth displayed so casually. Sam, bless him, had no such reservations. "Wow, Mom, look at that. Can we eat that?" He pointed at the elaborate seafood display. "You can eat anything you'd like," Caleb said warmly. "Should we get you a plate?" While Caleb helped Sam navigate the buffet, Melody stood alone for a moment, acutely aware of the glances coming her way. Curious glances, assessing glances, a few women whispering behind champagne flutes, their eyes flicking from her to Caleb and back again. She knew what they were thinking. She'd thought it herself. What was Caleb Beaumont doing with someone so obviously not from his world? "You must be the famous Melody." She turned to find an older gentleman, silver-haired, distinguished, wearing his tuxedo like he'd been born in it. His face was kind, though, which made her relax slightly. "I don't know about famous." "Tom Fletcher. I'm Caleb's business partner and friend. He's mentioned you." The man's eyes twinkled. "Several times, actually. Always in that particular tone that men get when they're trying very hard to be casual about someone they find fascinating." Melody felt heat rise to her cheeks. He's been kind to me. After a rather awkward first meeting. Ah, yes. The wrong flowers in the right place. Tom smiled. Caleb told me, between you and me, I think it's the best mistake that's happened to him in a very long time. Mr. Fletcher. Tom, please. And before you politely disagree, let me tell you something. I've known Caleb since he was 22, watched him build his company, watched him fall in love with Elizabeth, watched him lose her. These past 4 months have been... He paused, choosing words carefully. Dark. He's been going through the motions, showing up but not really present. But these past few weeks, he's different, lighter. He laughs. That's because of you. I think that's just time. Grief fading. No, grief doesn't fade that way. It just gets better at hiding. You gave him something else, permission to be human again. Before Melody could respond, Caleb returned with Sam, whose plate was loaded with shrimp and fancy little pastries. Her son's face was pure joy. Mom, they have chocolate fountains, chocolate fountains. The evening unfolded like something from a dream. They ate dinner at a table with Tom and his wife Diana, who was warm and grandmotherly and made Melody feel immediately welcome. They watched the speeches about the hospital's children's wing. They saw Caleb go up to the microphone and talk about Elizabeth's work, about her dedication to helping people, about keeping her legacy alive, and Melody watched him, this man who was learning to grieve honestly and felt something dangerous blooming in her chest. Something that felt like hope and terror mixed together. It was during the dancing that everything shifted. Sam had fallen asleep in a chair, exhausted by rich food and excitement. Caleb asked Melody to dance, and she wanted to refuse, wanted to remind him that people were watching, that his mother was probably somewhere in this crowd judging every moment. But she couldn't, because when she was in his arms, moving slowly to music that was probably played by musicians who cost more per hour than she made in a week, the rest of the world faded away. Thank you for coming tonight, Caleb said quietly, for bringing Sam, for giving me a reason to actually want to be here. You would have been fine without us. No, I would have been appropriate without you. There's a difference. He pulled back slightly to look at her. Melody, I need to tell you something. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. Okay, I'm falling for you. And I know that's complicated. I know I'm still figuring out how to grieve Elizabeth properly. I know you have every reason to be cautious. But I needed you to know that us, whatever this is, it matters to me. She should have been prepared for this, should have seen it coming. But hearing the words out loud made everything suddenly real and terrifying. Caleb, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know that you're not just some kind distraction. You're not my charity project or my grief cure. You're Melody. And I'm starting to think about futures again. And when I do, you're in them. The song ended. People were clapping. And Melody was standing in the middle of a ballroom full of strangers, feeling like her heart might crack open from the impossible beauty of what he'd just offered her. I need air, she whispered. They found a terrace, and Melody stood at the railing, looking out at the Boston skyline, trying to remember how to breathe. Caleb stood beside her, patient, waiting. I'm scared, she finally said. Terrified, actually. Of what? Of being wrong again. Of thinking this is real and finding out I'm just convenient, that when you're healed and the grief isn't so sharp, you'll realize you never needed me. You just needed not to be alone. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then, can I tell you what I see when I look at you? She nodded, not trusting her voice. I see someone who builds beauty from nothing, who loves her son so fiercely it's like watching a force of nature, who works until her hands are rough and her shoulders are tired and never once complains, who listens to a broken stranger talk about his dead wife at 3 in the morning and doesn't make him feel weak for needing that. I see strength and grace and realness. That's what I see, Melody. Not a convenience, not a cure. You. Her eyes burned with tears she couldn't quite hold back. I'm from Jamaica Plain, Caleb. You're from Beacon Hill. I count quarters. You write checks that change lives. Your mother looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe, and she was right to, I don't belong in your world. Then maybe I don't belong in my world either. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Maybe we need to build our own world, one where it doesn't matter that I have money and you don't. One where what matters is that we make each other laugh and listen to each other's pain and show up for each other. That's a beautiful idea, but it's not reality. Why not? Who says it can't be? She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But years of disappointment had taught her to protect herself, to expect the worst, so it hurt less when it inevitably arrived. Ask me again, she said finally. In a month? When the grief is a little less sharp and you've had time to think clearly, if you still want to build a world with a florist from Jamaica Plain, if you still see me the way you say you do, then ask me again. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was a maybe, a door left open just a crack. Caleb smiled, and it was sad and hopeful at the same time. I'll wait as long as you need. They went back inside, and Melody woke Sam gently. The car ride home was quiet, her son sleeping against her shoulder, her heart full of dangerous possibilities. Before she got out, Caleb touched her hand. 1 month, I'll be here. And Melody let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe some fairy tales had happy endings after all. The hospital garden looked different at dawn, softer somehow, with the early morning light filtering through the leaves and dew still clinging to the grass. Caleb sat on a bench near Elizabeth's memorial plaque, coffee cooling in his hands, trying to find the words for a conversation he'd been avoiding for 4 months. I met someone, he said finally, his voice carrying in the quiet. Her name is Melody. She's not you, Liz. She's completely different. She's a florist who barely makes ends meet and has a 7-year-old son and drives a van that needs repairs. She's from Jamaica Plain. She counts quarters. She's everything Mother would say is inappropriate for me. He paused, half expecting, what? A sign, permission, condemnation. And I'm falling in love with her, which is terrifying, because I already failed one person I loved. I managed your death instead of living it with you. I was so busy trying to fix everything that I forgot to just be present, and now I'm terrified I'll do the same thing to Melody, that I'll try to solve her problems with money instead of just being there. A jogger passed by, nodding politely, and Caleb waited until the footsteps faded before continuing. I opened your letter, the one you left for when I was ready to love again. You said I shouldn't find someone like you, that I should find someone who makes me want to be myself, and that's what Melody does. She doesn't care about the money or the status. She just sees me, the broken parts and the trying parts and the parts that are learning to be human again. The tears came then, the way they'd been coming more frequently lately. Not the harsh, painful tears of fresh grief, but something gentler, something that felt like release. I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I turned your illness into a project instead of being your partner through it. And I'm trying, Liz, I'm trying to learn how to be present, how to love without controlling, how to sit in discomfort without trying to manage it away. She'd forgive you, you know. Caleb turned to find Father O'Brien settling onto the bench beside him, 2 fresh cups of coffee in hand. He offered one to Caleb, who took it gratefully. How do you know? Caleb asked. Because I knew Elizabeth, and she loved you. Real love doesn't hold grudges, especially not about someone trying their best under impossible circumstances. Father O'Brien sipped his coffee. Besides, She told me herself, those last few weeks, she said her only real worry was that you'd freeze in place, build a shrine to her grief, instead of building a life. I've been trying not to do that. I've noticed. The garden work helps, I think. Creates something living instead of static. And this woman, Melody, you said, she's helping too. I don't want to use her as some kind of grief cure. That's not fair to her. Is that what you're doing? Caleb thought about Melody's laugh when he sent her terrible flower puns, about her fierce protectiveness of Sam, about the way she'd let him talk about Elizabeth without flinching, without trying to change the subject, without looking uncomfortable. No, I don't think so. I think she's just herself. And that's enough. Then the question isn't whether Elizabeth would approve. Father O'Brien stood, preparing to continue his morning rounds. The question is whether you'll forgive yourself for surviving her, for finding happiness after loss, for loving again after you thought your capacity for love had died with her. How do I do that? By remembering that life isn't betrayal, that Elizabeth wanted you to live fully, not exist in her memory, and by being honest, with Melody, with yourself, with God, with whatever you believe in, about who you are and what you need. After the priest left, Caleb sat alone with his coffee and his thoughts. He thought about Melody asking him to wait a month, about her fear that she was just convenient, about the way she'd looked at him on that terrace, like she wanted to believe but was terrified of being wrong. He understood that fear. He felt it too. But he also felt something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility, the sense that his future might contain more than just managing his past. His phone buzzed. A text from Melody. Sam wants to know if you'd like to come to his school science fair next Tuesday. No pressure, but he made his project about flowers and keeps asking if you'll see it. Caleb smiled, typing back, I'd be honored. What time? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. 7 p.m. Jefferson Elementary. Fair warning. It's loud and chaotic and very much not Beacon Hill. Perfect. I'll be there. And he would be. Not because he was trying to win Melody over or prove something, but because a 7-year-old boy had invited him to something important. And showing up for people you cared about was what love looked like. Real love. Present love. The kind Elizabeth had needed from him and he'd failed to give. He was learning, slowly, imperfectly. But he was learning, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Sam's homework folder lay open on Melody's kitchen table, a single sheet of paper staring up at her like an accusation. Family tree assignment, due Friday. Draw your family tree with at least 3 generations. Her son sat across from her, crayons scattered everywhere, his small face twisted in concentration. But he hadn't drawn anything yet, just held a green crayon above the blank branches, frozen. Baby, you okay? Sam looked up, and the question in his eyes made Melody's heart clench. Do I have to put Daddy on the tree? The words hit her like a fist. Careful, she told herself. This mattered. How she answered this mattered. He's your father, sweetheart. So yes, biologically he belongs on the tree. But he doesn't come see me. He doesn't call. Tommy's dad comes to all his games. And Tommy said maybe my dad doesn't come because... Sam's voice got smaller. Because I'm not good enough. No! Melody was around the table in a heartbeat, pulling her son into her lap, feeling his small body shake with the effort of not crying. Sam, listen to me. This has nothing to do with you. Nothing. Do you hear me? Then why doesn't he want me? 7 years old, and already asking the questions that had no good answers, already carrying the weight of an adult's failures. I don't know, baby. I wish I did. I wish I could explain it in a way that would make sense. But your father's choices, they're about him, about whatever is broken in him, not about you. But I'm his son. And you're wonderful, smart and kind and funny and brave. Any parent would be lucky to have you. If your father can't see that, it's because something is wrong with his eyes, not with you." Sam was quiet for a long moment, and Melody could feel him processing, the way children do, slowly, carefully, trying to make adult failures fit into their simple understanding of how the world should work. "Tommy said his mum said we must be poor because you work so hard and we still don't have a lot of stuff." Fresh pain. Children could be cruel without meaning to, and their parents could be worse. "We're not poor, Sam. We're careful with money because I want to make sure we always have what we need. But we have everything that matters. We have each other. We have love. We have a home." "I know, but sometimes," his voice broke, "sometimes I wish I had a dad who stayed." Melody held him while he finally cried. Deep, gulping sobs that she felt in her own chest. She cried too, silently, into his hair, mourning the father he deserved and didn't have, mourning the family tree that would always have a branch that felt incomplete. When the tears finally slowed, Sam pulled back and wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Can I put other people on the tree, like Rosa and Grandma and Caleb? You can put anyone who feels like family. Caleb feels like family. Is that weird?" "No, baby, that's not weird at all." Sam went back to his paper, drawing now, adding names and faces to branches, and there, in the corner, carefully drawn, a tall figure labeled, "My friend Caleb." Melody pulled out her phone and texted Rosa, "Bad night. Sam asking about Marcus. I'm not okay." The response came immediately. "Want me to come over?" "No, just needed to tell someone." Her phone rang instead of buzzing with another text, but it wasn't Rosa's name on the screen. It was Caleb. Her finger hovered over the decline button. She was a mess, eyes swollen, heart raw. This wasn't the time, but something made her answer anyway. "Melody, Rosa called me. She's worried about you. Are you okay?" "She called you?" Melody felt a flash of annoyance, then realized it was easier to feel angry than vulnerable. She had no right to. "She loves you. She's worried. Am I allowed to be worried too?" The gentleness in his voice unraveled something in her chest. "I'm fine. He's having a hard night. Marcus stuff." "What happened?" So she told him. About the family tree, about Sam's questions, about being 7 years old and already learning that fathers sometimes leave and never come back. "I'm coming over," Caleb said when she finished. "No, you don't have to." "I'm not asking. I'm telling you that I'm getting in my car right now, and I'm bringing... What do kids like? Ice cream. I'm bringing ice cream. What flavor does Sam like? Chocolate." "But Caleb, really, we're fine. You don't need to." "I need to. Let me need to. Please." 20 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Caleb stood there in jeans and a sweatshirt she'd never seen him wear. Casual clothes that made him look younger, less like the billionaire and more like just a man. He held 2 grocery bags. "I didn't know what flavor you liked, so I bought 6 different kinds. Also, I got cookie dough and those little chocolate chips you can sprinkle on top." The checkout person judged me. Despite everything, Melody laughed. It came out watery and broken, but it was real. Sam appeared behind her, eyes still red but curious. "Mr. Caleb, why are you here?" "I heard you were having a tough night. Thought maybe ice cream would help." He knelt down to Sam's level, the bags crinkling. "And I wanted to see if you needed a friend." Something in Sam's face crumbled. He launched himself at Caleb, small arms wrapping tight around his neck, and started crying again, the kind of crying that a child does when an adult offers kindness at exactly the moment they need it most. Caleb held him, looked at Melody over Sam's shaking shoulders, and she saw understanding in his eyes, not pity, not discomfort, just presence. "It's okay, buddy," Caleb said softly. "Sometimes things are hard, and that's okay. You're allowed to be sad." They ended up on Melody's worn couch, eating ice cream straight from the containers, Sam wedged between them. Her son told Caleb about the family tree, about Tommy's comments, about not understanding why his father didn't want him. And Caleb listened, really listened, didn't offer false promises or easy answers, just listened and said the thing that adults so rarely said to children. That's really hard. I'm sorry you're going through that. Mr. Caleb, did your dad stay? He did, but he wasn't always very good at showing love. He was busy a lot. Sometimes being there physically isn't the same as being there emotionally. What does that mean? It means... Caleb paused, choosing his words carefully. It means that your dad leaving might hurt less than having a dad who stays but doesn't really see you. At least you know where you stand. At least your mom loves you enough for two parents. Sam considered this, chocolate ice cream smeared on his chin. I guess, but I still wish I had a dad who wanted to be here. I know, and that's fair. You're allowed to wish for that. After Sam went to bed, exhausted from emotion, Melody and Caleb sat in her small living room. She should have felt embarrassed about the worn furniture, the stack of bills on the counter, the life that looked so different from his. But she was too tired to care. Thank you, she said quietly, for coming, for not trying to fix it. I learned something from Elizabeth. His voice was rough. Sometimes the people you love don't need solutions. They just need someone to sit with them in the hard parts. You're getting better at that. I'm trying. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. Melody, I need to tell you something about Marcus. What about him? I want to call him. I want to tell him exactly what I think about a man who abandons his son. I want to make him hurt the way Sam is hurting. Melody's first instinct was to say no, to protect Marcus from Caleb's anger, because that's what she'd always done. Smoothed things over, made excuses, tried to keep peace, but then she thought about Sam's question, why doesn't he want me? And she said, okay, okay, okay. Call him, tell him, maybe someone should. She squeezed his hand. But after that, we let it go. Marcus is who he is. Sam deserves better than to spend his life waiting for his father to show up. He deserves to move forward. With people who do show up. Exactly. Caleb stayed until she fell asleep on the couch, talked out and emotionally wrung dry. When she woke at 2 a.m., she found a blanket tucked around her and a note on the coffee table. You're raising an incredible kid. He has that because of you, not despite Marcus. You're enough. You've always been enough. Sleep well. I'll call you tomorrow. See, and underneath, in Sam's crayon, Caleb is nice. Can he stay? Melody held the note to her chest and let herself hope, just for a moment, that maybe families didn't have to look the way everyone said they should. Maybe families were the people who showed up, who sat with you in the hard parts, who brought 6 flavors of ice cream when your heart was breaking. Maybe that was enough. The children's art gallery was bright and crowded, full of proud parents and self-conscious kids standing by their paintings. Melody held Sam's hand as they navigated through the crowd, her son practically vibrating with excitement. There, Mom, there it is. Sam pointed to a painting hanging on the far wall, a riot of color that somehow captured their small family. Melody, Sam, their cat Pickles. Rosa in the corner with her knowing smile. Grandma Patty with her grey hair, and there, drawn carefully in the margin, was Caleb. It's beautiful, baby. Mr. Caleb said he'd try to come. Do you think he will? I don't know, sweetheart. He's very busy. But as if summoned by her son's hope, Caleb appeared through the crowd, slightly breathless, still in his work suit. Sorry I'm late. Board meeting ran over. Did I miss it? Sam's face lit up like Christmas morning. You came. Come see my painting. Watching Caleb crouch down to Sam's eye level, listening with genuine interest as her son explained every detail of his artwork, Melody felt something dangerous settle in her chest. This was what it could look like. A partner who showed up. A man who kept his promises to a 7-year-old. This was what Sam deserved. What she'd stopped believing she deserved. "Melody, is that you?" The voice made her blood freeze. She turned slowly, already knowing who she'd see. Marcus stood there in expensive casual wear, his new wife Tiffany beside him, and Tiffany was very, very pregnant. "Marcus," her voice came out steadier than she felt, "I didn't know you'd be here." "Tiffany's on the host committee. We're supporting the arts." His eyes flicked to where Sam was talking animatedly to Caleb, and something uncomfortable crossed his face. "Sam's painting is great. You must be proud." "I am. Every single day." Tiffany stepped forward, her hand protective over her swollen belly. "You're Sam's mother. I've heard so much about you. Your son is talented." The words were kind, but they felt like knives. This woman who'd helped break apart Sam's family, was standing there being gracious, as if that could erase the damage. "Thank you." Melody kept her voice level, professional, like she was talking to a customer instead of the woman who'd slept with her husband. Sam noticed them then. His whole body went rigid, and Melody watched her son's face cycle through emotions. Hope, confusion, hurt. "Dad." Marcus's smile was awkward. "Hey, champ, cool painting. Is that supposed to be me?" He pointed at the cat. Melody's heart cracked. But Sam looked at his father with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than 7. "No, that's Pickles. You're not in it." The brutal honesty of children. Marcus flinched. "Oh, well, maybe next time you could." "Why would I put you in it? You're not part of my family." The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. Ripples of discomfort spread outward. Tiffany's hand went to Marcus's arm. Other parents nearby pretended not to listen while absolutely listening. "Sam, buddy," Marcus started, "you didn't come to my birthday. You didn't come to my soccer games. You don't call. You said you would, but you didn't." Sam's voice was rising, tears starting to form. "Why don't you want me?" "I do want you. I'm just busy with work and you're having a new baby." Sam pointed at Tiffany's belly. "Are you going to love that baby more than me?" Marcus looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. "It's not about love. It's about you making choices." Caleb's voice was quiet but firm as he moved to stand beside Sam, his hand on the boy's shoulder. "And choosing not to show up for your son. Who are you?" Marcus's defensive posture kicked in immediately. "Someone who shows up." The two men stared at each other, and Melody could feel the tension crackling. She needed to de-escalate this, needed to get Sam out of here before things got worse. "Sam, honey, let's go get some juice, okay?" But Sam wasn't done. "Mr. Caleb comes to my stuff. He came to my science fair. He came tonight even though he had a meeting. Why can he show up and you can't?" "Sam, it's complicated. Adult relationships are—" "You left us." Her son's voice broke. "You left me and Mom, and you got a new family, and I'm supposed to just—" "What? Pretend it doesn't hurt." Melody scooped Sam up despite the fact that he was getting too big for it, felt him bury his face in her neck, his body shaking with sobs. Over his head, she looked at Marcus. "You should go." "Mel, Go, please, before you make this worse." Marcus and Tiffany left, and the gallery felt somehow quieter despite the crowd. Caleb followed Melody outside to a small terrace where Sam could cry without an audience. Her son clung to her, asking the question she couldn't answer. Why did Daddy leave? Why doesn't he love me? What did I do wrong? And Caleb just stood there, didn't try to offer platitudes, didn't try to make it better, just bore witness to her child's pain with a solemnness that made her love him a little more. Eventually, Sam's sobs quieted to hiccups. He lifted his head from Melody's shoulder and looked at Caleb. Are you going to leave too? The question hung in the evening air. Melody held her breath. I'm going to try very hard not to, Caleb said carefully. I can't promise that nothing will ever change, but I can promise that I'm choosing to be here, that I'm working really hard to be the kind of person who shows up. Is that okay? Sam studied him with those two old eyes. Then, okay, but if you leave, I'm going to be really mad at you. That's fair. You should be mad at people who hurt you. They drove home in Caleb's car, Melody's van having chosen that morning to finally die completely. Sam fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from emotion. In the quiet darkness, Caleb reached for Melody's hand. I want to call him, he said again. Marcus. I want to tell him exactly what kind of man abandons a kid like Sam. Don't. He's not worth your anger. But Sam is worth protecting. Then protect him by staying. By being there, by showing him what a good man looks like. She squeezed his hand. That's the best revenge against Marcus. Not words, just being everything he isn't. Later, after Sam was tucked into bed and Caleb was leaving, Melody walked him to the door. But this time, when he leaned down to kiss her cheek in goodbye, she turned her head. Their lips met, soft, gentle, full of promise and fear and hope. When they pulled apart, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you, he whispered, both of you, and it terrifies me. Me too, she admitted, on both counts. So what do? We take it slow. We're honest. We show up. And we hope that's enough. Deal. After he left, Melody checked on Sam one more time, found the family tree assignment on his nightstand, now complete. And there, on a branch right next to Sam's name, drawn in careful crayon, Caleb, my friend who stays. She took a picture and sent it to Caleb. His response came immediately. Frame that. It's the best review I've ever gotten. And for the first time since Marcus left, Melody let herself believe that maybe her son would be okay, that maybe they'd all be okay, that maybe showing up was enough after all. Mount Auburn Cemetery was quiet in the morning, the kind of quiet that felt holy. Melody walked beside Caleb through winding paths lined with old trees, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. She'd brought flowers from the shop. Not a formal arrangement, just a simple bunch of cosmos and forget-me-nots. Thank you for coming with me, Caleb said quietly. I've been here every week since she died, but I haven't really talked to her. What have you been doing? Standing there, being appropriate, making sure the flowers are fresh, managing. He laughed without humor. Managing even my grief. Elizabeth's headstone was elegant marble, simple lettering. Elizabeth Harrington Beaumont, beloved wife, brilliant mind, generous heart. The dates made Melody's chest ache. Only 42 years. So much life unlived. Tell me about her, Melody said. Really tell me. Not the obituary version. So Caleb talked about how Elizabeth couldn't cook to save her life, but insisted on trying. About her collection of terrible reality TV shows that she watched after long days in the lab. About how she'd get so focused on her research that she'd forget to eat her, and Caleb would have to bring her sandwiches. About how she'd grown up poor in South Boston, worked 3 jobs to pay for community college, earned scholarships that took her to MIT and then Harvard Medical School. About how she never forgot where she came from, how she volunteered at free clinics and fought for funding for underserved communities. She would have liked you, Caleb said. You're both stubborn, both fight for what you believe in, both love fiercely and protect your people. I wish I could have known her. I wish, his voice broke. I wish I'd known her better, really known her. I thought I did. But when she got sick, I realized I'd been so busy building my career, building our life, that I'd missed actually living it with her. He sank down to sit on the grass beside the grave, and Melody sat beside him. When she was dying, She asked me to stop managing and just be with her. Just hold her hand, just be scared with her instead of trying to fix everything. Tears streamed down Caleb's face. And I couldn't do it. I was too afraid. So I researched treatments and called specialists and made spreadsheets of survival statistics. I managed her death like a business problem. Caleb. And now she's gone, and I can't take it back. I can't tell her I'm sorry. I can't ask her what she really needed from me. I just have this. He gestured at the perfectly maintained grave, the fresh flowers, the obsessive care. This, which is more managing, more controlling what I can't control. Melody didn't try to comfort him with platitudes. She just held his hand while he cried, really cried, for maybe the first time since Elizabeth died. Deep, racking sobs that came from somewhere primal. When he finally quieted, she spoke. My dad died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. And I'd been so busy with the shop, with Sam, with surviving the divorce, that I hadn't called him in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And then he was just gone. She swallowed hard. I never got to tell him that the shop was finally turning a profit, that I was going to be okay, that everything he'd sacrificed for me hadn't been wasted. I'm sorry. Me too. And I've carried that guilt every day since. But you know what I realized? My dad knew. He knew I was busy. He knew I was struggling. And he loved me anyway. He didn't need my gratitude spelled out. He just needed to know his daughter was going to make it. Caleb looked at Elizabeth's grave. Do you think she knew? I think she knew you loved her. And I think she knew you were doing your best, even when your best wasn't what she needed. Love isn't always enough, Caleb. Sometimes we fail the people we love. But that doesn't mean the love wasn't real. They sat in silence for a while, and Melody placed her simple flowers at the base of the headstone. Not as fancy as the arrangements the florist probably delivered weekly, but real, from her hands, from her heart. I'm falling in love with someone, Caleb said to the grave. Her name is Melody. She's nothing like you, Liz. She's from Jamaica Plain. She barely makes ends meet. She has a 7-year-old son who asks impossible questions, and I'm terrified. He looked at Melody. I'm terrified I'll do to her what I did to you, that I'll try to control and manage instead of just being present, that I'll fail her the way I failed you. You didn't fail Elizabeth, Melody said firmly. You did what you could with what you knew. And you're learning. That's what growth looks like. What if it's not enough? What if it is? Caleb pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, slightly worn. Elizabeth's handwriting on the front, for when you're ready to love again. She left me letters, for different milestones. This one I've been carrying around for a month. I can't bring myself to open it. Why not? Because what if she tells me I'm not ready? What if she's disappointed in me? What if... Caleb. Open it. His hands shook as he broke the seal. Melody gave him privacy, looking away, listening to the whisper of paper unfolding. When she glanced back, tears were streaming down his face again, but he was smiling. She says... His voice broke. She says, don't find someone like her. Find someone who makes me want to be myself. Someone who challenges me. Someone who reminds me that life is messy and beautiful and never goes according to plan. He laughed through tears. She says, if I'm reading this while paralyzed by guilt, I should stop being an idiot. Her words, stop being an idiot, Cal. I'm dead. You're not. Go be alive. Go be ridiculously, messily, imperfectly alive. And stop managing everything. Some things are supposed to be chaos. Melody was crying now, too. She sounds wise. She was. She is. He folded the letter carefully, reverently. She gave me permission, but I don't think I needed her permission. I needed to forgive myself. Have you? I'm starting to, with your help. He turned to face her fully. Melody, I'm falling in love with you, and I'm scared. but I'm more scared of not trying, of letting fear control me the way it did with Elizabeth, of managing my way out of actually living." She cupped his face in her hands. "I'm scared too, terrified, actually, but I'm here anyway. We're both here. That has to count for something." And there, in the cemetery where his wife rested, Caleb kissed Melody properly for the first time. It was tender and salt-stained and full of grief and hope, tangled together. When they pulled apart, Caleb touched his forehead to hers. "Thank you for coming here with me, for not being afraid of my grief. Thank you for trusting me with it." As they walked back to the car, Caleb reached for her hand. It felt right. It felt like beginning something while honoring what came before. It felt like what Elizabeth had wanted, someone choosing to be alive again. That evening, back at Melody's apartment, they sat on her worn couch while Sam did homework at the kitchen table. Caleb's arm was around her shoulders, her head rested against his chest, and for the first time in a very long time, Melody felt safe. Not saved, not rescued, just safe. Like maybe she'd found someone who would stay. Continuing with chapters 10 to 12. 6 weeks after the cemetery, Melody woke up smiling. It was becoming a habit. The autumn sun filtered through her bedroom curtains, and she could hear Sam singing off-key in the shower. Her phone showed 3 missed texts from Caleb, each one making her smile wider. 8:47 a.m., awake and thinking about you. 6:15 a.m., did you know that ranunculus means I am dazzled by your charms? Just learned that. Seemed relevant. 6:43 a.m., can I see you today? I'm having withdrawal. She texted back, you saw me yesterday. His response was immediate. Exactly, withdrawal. Rosa was already at the shop when Melody arrived, giving her that knowing look that had become increasingly frequent. You're glowing. I am not glowing. You are absolutely glowing. That's what happens when a good man treats you right. Rosa arranged baby's breath in a vase, her smile mischievous. He's coming by today. He has a board meeting at noon, but maybe after. And maybe he'll stay for dinner, and maybe he'll do that thing where he looks at you like you hung the moon. Rosa. What? I'm just saying, it's nice to see you happy, mija. Real happy. Not just managing happy. The morning passed in the pleasant rhythm of familiar work. Melody lost herself in arrangements. A bridal bouquet for a woman getting married at 65 after her husband of 40 years had passed. Second chances, the woman had said. They're real. Melody hoped she was right. Caleb arrived at 2, still in his suit from the meeting, and Sam launched himself at him the way he'd started doing lately. Like Caleb was a permanent fixture. Like he wasn't going anywhere. Mr. Caleb, can you help with my math? Mum's not good at fractions. I'm fine at fractions, Melody protested. You said they make your brain hurt. They do, but I can still help. Caleb laughed, ruffling Sam's hair. How about I help with math, and your mum makes us that amazing pasta she promised? They'd fallen into routines without meaning to. Caleb at her apartment 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Family dinners. Homework help. Movie nights where Sam fell asleep between them. Slow, steady building of something that felt remarkably like a life together. After Sam went to bed, Melody and Caleb ended up on her couch the way they often did now, tangled together in the casual intimacy of people growing comfortable with each other's presence. I got my van fixed today, Melody said. Finally, Rosa's nephew did it at cost, but it still wiped out my savings. She felt Caleb tense slightly. You should have told me. I could have. No. She pulled back to look at him. We talked about this. I handle my finances. You don't swoop in and fix things. I wasn't trying to fix. I was trying to help. There's a difference. There should be. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm trying to understand where the line is. Between being supportive and being controlling. Between helping because I care and helping because I'm trying to manage. The line is asking first, respecting my answer. She softened her voice. I know you want to help, and I love that about you. But I need to be able to take care of myself and Sam. If I can't do that, then I'm just dependent, and I've been dependent before. It doesn't end well. I'm not Marcus. I know. But old fears have loud voices. They were quiet for a moment, working through the tension. This was the thing no one told you about falling in love, that it wasn't just the beautiful moments. It was also navigating the hard conversations, the old wounds, the different ways you'd each learned to survive. What if, Caleb said carefully, we set up a standing date? Once a week, we talk about the hard stuff, money, fears, expectations, whatever needs to be said. You want to schedule emotional conversations. I want to make sure we keep having them, that I don't slip back into managing instead of communicating. Melody kissed him, soft and sweet and full of affection for this man who was trying so hard to unlearn a lifetime of controlling behavior. Okay, standing date, Thursdays. Hard stuff and honesty, and maybe wine. Definitely wine. The kiss deepened, and Melody felt heat bloom through her chest. They'd been careful, taking things slowly, always aware of Sam sleeping down the hall. But God, she wanted this man, wanted the promise of him, the possibility of building something real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Caleb pressed his forehead to hers. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer. Okay, my apartment has been sitting empty for weeks. I'm always here anyway. What if... He took a breath. What if I spent less time pretending I go home and more time just being here, with you, with Sam? Melody's heart kicked. You want to move in? I want to move toward that. Maybe I keep some things here. Maybe I'm here more nights than not. Maybe we see how it feels before making it official. He rushed on. No pressure. If you need more time, I understand. I miss you when I'm not here. Is that crazy? No. Her voice came out whisper soft. I miss you too. But Caleb, what about Sam? What about the example we're setting? I don't want him to think people just move in together without commitment. Then let's talk to him. Explain that we're building something. That this is us moving forward together, that we're a team figuring things out. He'll have questions. Then we'll answer them honestly. Caleb cupped her face. Melody, I'm not going anywhere. You know that, right? This isn't temporary for me. You and Sam. You're not a phase or a grief cure or a distraction. You're my life now. And I want to live my life here, with you. She was crying, which was becoming embarrassing. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Okay, yes, let's try it, but slowly, and if it doesn't work, then we figure it out. Together. They told Sam over breakfast the next morning. Her son looked between them, processing with that serious face he got when thinking hard. So Mr. Caleb would live here with us. Some of the time, Melody explained. We're testing it out, seeing how it feels. Would he sleep in your room? Yes. Would he be like, my stepdad? Caleb reached across the table for Sam's hand. I'd like to be someone important in your life, if you want that. But we'd figure out together what that looks like. I'm not trying to replace your father. Good, because he's not doing a great job anyway. Sam's brutal honesty made both adults wince. But you show up. So yeah, you can stay. But I get to help pick what snacks you buy. Deal. And you have to watch my soccer games, all of them. Wouldn't miss them. And if you make my mum sad, I'm going to be really, really mad at you. Caleb's expression turned solemn. That's fair. Your mum is important. She should be protected. Sam nodded, satisfied. Then, can we get a dog now? Sam, what? If we're becoming a real family, families have dogs. Caleb laughed, and the sound filled Melody's small kitchen with warmth. We'll talk about the dog. And just like that, They were trying, building, growing into something that felt less like a whirlwind romance and more like a real, sustainable life. Melody's sister Jen said they were moving too fast. Caleb's brother David said he was being reckless. Margaret Beaumont said nothing, which somehow felt more ominous. But Tom Fletcher stopped by the shop one afternoon with a smile on his face. "He's happy, really happy. Thank you for that. I'm not doing anything special. You're loving him. You're letting him love you. You're teaching him to be present instead of perfect. That's everything." That night, with Caleb's toothbrush in her bathroom and his coffee mug in her cabinet, Melody stood in her doorway and watched him help Sam with homework. This man who'd stumbled into her life through a wrong delivery. This man who was learning to be present instead of controlling. This man who chose her and her son every single day. She took a picture, wanting to remember this moment. Wanting to remember that sometimes wrong turns led to exactly where you needed to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. "How's the sleepover going?" Melody typed back, "Perfect. Terrifying. Perfect. That's love, Mika. Perfectly terrifying." And it was, but for the first time in 5 years, Melody wasn't afraid of the terror. She was leaning into it, trusting it, believing that maybe this time the scary leap would end in something soft, something real, something that would last. The restaurant was too fancy, which should have been Melody's first warning. Caleb had chosen a place in the seaport with white tablecloths and a wine list that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. He'd seemed nervous on the drive over, which should have been her second warning, but she'd been too happy to notice, too wrapped up in the glow of the past 2 months to see the storm gathering. They ordered, made small talk. The waiter brought wine that Caleb barely touched, and then, between the appetizer and the main course, he pulled out a folder, a professional folder, the kind with a company logo embossed on the front. "I wanted to talk to you about something," he began, and Melody's stomach dropped. "I've been thinking about your shop, about your finances, about how hard you work for so little return." "Caleb, please, let me finish. I had my people draw up a proposal." He opened the folder, revealing papers with legal letterhead, a position. Personal floral curator for Beaumont Properties. You'd be in charge of all the arrangements for my buildings, my events, my corporate gifts. The salary would be $150,000 a year, plus benefits, full health insurance for you and Sam. Flexible hours. You'd still own your shop, but you'd have guaranteed income. The words hit her like physical blows. $150,000, health insurance, guaranteed income, a contract. He was offering her a contract. "You're hiring me." Her voice came out flat. "I'm offering you security, stability, a way to stop worrying about van repairs and field trip money. A way to give Sam everything he needs by putting me on your payroll, by giving you a position that recognizes your talent and—" "Stop!" She stood up, the chair scraping loud against the floor. Other diners turned to look. She didn't care. "You're trying to hire me like I'm your employee. That's not—" Caleb stood too, confusion and hurt on his face. "Melody, I'm trying to help you." "Help me," she laughed, but it came out broken. "You're trying to make me dependent on you. You're trying to control this relationship with money. That's not fair. I'm offering you stability. I don't want your stability. I want—" She couldn't even finish the sentence. Couldn't put words to the devastation flooding through her. "I thought you saw me, really saw me, but you just see someone to fix. You're twisting this. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to make your life easier. By hiring me, by making sure I need you financially so I can't leave. Is that what this is? You're terrified I'll walk away, so you're trying to lock me in with a contract." Caleb's face went white. "That's not— You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Melody's hands shook as she picked up her purse. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and angry. "Marcus did this. He praised me for fixing him, for helping him get his career on track. And then, once he was successful, once he didn't need me anymore, he left. Because I was never a partner. I was a service, a stepping stone, someone to use until he was ready for his real life. I am nothing like Marcus. Aren't you? You're trying to make me dependent on you, to put me in a position where leaving you means losing my financial security, where I'm grateful to you instead of equal with you. That's not what I'm doing. I love you. No. The word came out choked. You love the idea of saving me, of being my hero, but I don't need a hero, Caleb. I needed a partner, someone who saw me as an equal, not a charity project with a generous salary and good benefits. She started walking toward the door, desperate to escape before she completely fell apart. Caleb followed, reaching for her arm. Melody, please. You're misunderstanding. Let me explain. She pulled away. Did you do this with Elizabeth? Try to solve her cancer with money? Is that why she begged you to just be present with her? Because you tried to manage everything instead of just being human? The words hung between them like poison. Caleb looked like she'd slapped him. That's not fair, he said quietly. None of this is fair. Melody wiped her eyes. I was finally starting to believe, to hope, to think that maybe I'd found someone who valued me for who I am, not what I can provide. But you don't see me, Caleb. You see a problem to solve, a woman to save, a life to improve. That's not true. Then why a contract? Why did you have your lawyers draw up papers instead of just being with me? Why is your first instinct, when you see me struggling, to try to control the situation with money? He had no answer. Or rather, the answer was written all over his face, because managing was what he knew, fixing was his default. And when faced with someone he loved who was vulnerable, his instinct was to eliminate that vulnerability through financial means. Just like he'd done with Elizabeth's cancer, throwing money at specialists and treatments instead of sitting with her fear. I can't do this, Melody said. I can't be with someone who thinks love is a transaction, who thinks they can buy my presence with a generous salary. It's not about buying you. Then what is it about? Tell me. Make me understand. Caleb's jaw worked. I was scared, okay? I was scared that one day your van would break down and you wouldn't have the money to fix it, or Sam would need something and you'd have to choose between that and rent, or you'd get sick and wouldn't have insurance. I was terrified of watching you struggle and not being able to help, so you tried to eliminate my struggle, to control the situation. Yes, the admission came out defeated. Yes, because that's what I do. I see a problem and I try to fix it, and I didn't. I didn't see how that would feel to you, how it would look like I was trying to change you instead of support you. Thank you for your honesty. Melody's voice broke. But I can't accept this offer, Mr. Beaumont, and I can't do this anymore. Please don't contact me again. She left, got a cab, cried the whole way home. Rosa was waiting with Sam, took one look at Melody's face, and sent Sam to his room with a gentle promise that everything would be okay. What happened? Melody told her, about the contract, the position, the generous salary and benefits. And Rosa, sweet Rosa, just held her while she sobbed. He's an idiot, Rosa said firmly. A well-meaning idiot, but an idiot nonetheless. He tried to hire me, Rosa, like I'm his decorator or his accountant, something he pays for. He's scared. Men do stupid things when they're scared. I don't care. I was right all along. I'm just a pit stop, a charity case, something to fix on his way to his real life. Do you really believe that? Melody wanted to say yes, wanted to confirm her worst fears. But underneath the anger and hurt, she could still hear his voice. I was terrified of watching you struggle. Not disgusted by her struggle, terrified by it. But that didn't matter. He'd still tried to control her, still tried to manage their relationship like a business deal. She blocked his number, changed the shop's phone. Returned to the carefully controlled life she'd built before Caleb Beaumont stumbled into it with his wrong hospital room and his grief and his devastating blue eyes. Sam cried when she told him Caleb wouldn't be coming around anymore. "Everyone leaves," her son said, and Melody had no comfort to offer because he was right. Everyone did leave, and she'd been a fool to think this time would be different. The apartment felt bigger without her, emptier. All that space Caleb had once filled with carefully chosen furniture and expensive art now just felt like a mausoleum again. He stood at his window, looking out at the city, holding the contract he'd so carefully prepared, the contract that had destroyed everything. "You're an idiot," Tom Fletcher said from the doorway. Caleb didn't turn around. "I know. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking she was struggling, that I could help, that I loved her and wanted to make her life easier. By hiring her, by giving her security," Caleb's voice rose, "by making sure she and Sam would be okay. What's wrong with that?" "Everything. Everything is wrong with that." Tom came to stand beside him. "You tried to manage her, Caleb, the way you managed Elizabeth's illness. The way you manage everything that scares you. I wasn't trying to manage her. Weren't you? When faced with a woman you love who's vulnerable, what did you do? You created a contract. You eliminated the vulnerability through financial means. You tried to control the situation." Caleb closed his eyes. "I didn't see it that way." "I know. That's the problem. You thought you were helping. But what you did was tell her that you saw her struggle as something unacceptable. Something that needed to be fixed before you could be with her properly. That's not, is it? Because from where I'm standing, you took a woman who was proud of building her business from nothing, who was managing just fine on her own terms, and told her she needed your help, your money, your rescue." Caleb sank into a chair, the contract crumpling in his hands. "I love her." "I know you do. But love isn't about eliminating someone's problems. It's about standing with them in those problems. It's about being present for the struggle, not removing the struggle." Like Elizabeth said. Exactly like Elizabeth said. "You're doing it again, Caleb. Managing instead of being present. Controlling instead of supporting. So what do I do? How do I fix this?" "You can't fix it. That's the whole point. You can't throw money at this. You can't create a strategy or develop a plan. You have to do the one thing you're terrible at." "What?" "Sit with your failure, learn from it, change fundamentally, and then, maybe, if she's willing to hear you out, you show her through actions that you've learned. Not words, not grand gestures, actions." Tom left, and Caleb sat alone in his empty apartment, surrounded by flowers from Melody's shop that were starting to die. He counted them. 23 arrangements over the past 3 months. Each one she'd chosen carefully. Each one with a message in the language of flowers she'd taught him. Pink roses, gratitude and grace, forget-me-nots, true love and memories, yellow tulips, sunshine and hope, blue irises, faith and wisdom. She'd been telling him something all along, and he'd been too busy managing to listen. He picked up his phone, started to call her, then remembered she'd blocked him. Started to text, then realized that would just prove he hadn't learned anything. Father O'Brien found him 3 days later, sitting in the hospital's quiet chapel, staring at nothing. "Heard you made a mess of things." News travels fast. In a community this size, always. The priest settled into the pew beside him. "Want to talk about it?" So Caleb told him everything. The contract, Melody's face, her words about Marcus, her accusation that he was trying to buy her. "Was she wrong?" Father O'Brien asked when he finished. "Yes, no, I don't know." Caleb put his head in his hands. "I thought I was helping. I thought I was showing her I cared by trying to make her life easier. But what I did was tell her she wasn't enough as she was, that she needed my money to be acceptable to me." "Did you mean that?" "No. I love her exactly as she is. I love that she's scrappy and resourceful and proud. I love that she built something from nothing. I love that she counts quarters but makes her son feel rich in love. Then why did you try to change that?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then, because I was scared, terrified, actually, of losing her the way I lost Elizabeth, of loving someone and not being able to save them, of being helpless again. So you tried to eliminate your helplessness by controlling her circumstances. Yes, which meant you made your fear more important than her dignity. The words landed like a punch. Yes, Father O'Brien stood. Here's what you do. You sit with this failure. You really understand what you did wrong. And then you do something that proves you've learned, not something that benefits you. Something that honors what she taught you, whether or not she ever speaks to you again. What if she never forgives me? Then you live with that, but you still do the work. You still become the person who's worthy of her forgiveness, even if you never receive it. That's what growth looks like. After the priest left, Caleb sat in the chapel for hours, thinking about flowers and growth and the difference between managing and tending. And slowly, an idea began to form. Not a plan to win her back, not a grand gesture to prove his love, just something real, something that honored what Melody had taught him about growth requiring patience and presence and getting your hands dirty, something that would take time and humility and daily work with no guarantee of results, something that wasn't about him at all. He left the chapel as the sun was setting, and for the first time in days he felt something that wasn't despair. He felt purpose. Not the purpose of fixing or managing or controlling, but the purpose of growth, of becoming someone better, someone worthy of the love he'd been offered and had nearly destroyed. The flowers in his apartment had died completely by the time he got home. He gathered them carefully, every petal, every stem. He would keep them, a reminder of what he'd almost had, and what he'd learned from losing it. The soil under Caleb's fingernails felt foreign and right at the same time. He knelt on the hospital rooftop, planting perennials that wouldn't bloom until spring, and tried not to think about whether Melody would ever see them. 2 weeks since the restaurant, 2 weeks since he'd destroyed everything with a contract and good intentions. 2 weeks of learning what it meant to sit with failure instead of managing it away. "You're doing it wrong." Caleb looked up to find an elderly woman watching him, her walker parked nearby, an oxygen tank attached. She wore a hospital gown under a cardigan that had seen better days. "I'm sorry. Those hostas, you're planting them in full sun. They need shade or they'll burn." She shuffled closer, peering at his work. "First time gardening. That obvious? Your hands are soft." "Well, they were getting some good calluses now." She lowered herself carefully onto a bench. "I'm Dorothy Chen. Been volunteering in this garden for 30 years. Watched it go from beautiful to neglected. Nice to see someone caring for it again." Caleb sat back on his heels. "I'm trying to revitalize it, make it a place where patients and families can come, find some peace." "Good man. Why? Why what? Why you doing this? Rich man like you could just write a check, have landscapers do the work. But here you are, blistering your hands and planting things wrong." Caleb smiled despite himself. "Someone I loved taught me that growth requires getting your hands dirty, that you can't buy real change. You have to tend it." Dorothy's weathered face softened. "She sounds wise." "She was, both." He looked at the garden taking shape around them. "I failed her, and I'm trying to understand what she was trying to teach me, even if it's too late. It's never too late to learn. Might be too late to fix what you broke. But the learning still matters." They worked together for the next hour, Dorothy correcting his mistakes with the gentle patience of someone who'd taught many beginners. She showed him how to check soil pH, how to companion plant, how to leave space for things to spread and grow. "That's the mistake most people make," she said, pointing at his too close planting. "They want it to look full immediately, but plants need room to breathe. Need space to become what they're meant to be. You crowd them, they strangle each other. Like relationships. Like everything." Dorothy stood slowly, joints protesting. "I'll come back tomorrow. Someone needs to make sure you don't kill all these plants before they have a chance. After she left, Caleb kept working. His back ached. His hands were raw, and something in him felt lighter. Like he was building something that mattered in a way his business deals never had. Tom found him at sunset, covered in dirt, surrounded by flats of plants waiting to be placed. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible. It's good." Tom settled on the bench Dorothy had vacated. "Heard you turned down the Singapore deal, the one worth 40 million. Didn't have time. Too busy learning about hostas." "Caleb, I know what I'm doing looks crazy. But I need this, Tom. I need to do something with my hands that can't be delegated or managed or bought. I need to understand what it means to create something living that requires daily care. And when Melody never sees it?" The question hurt, but Caleb had been asking himself the same thing for 2 weeks. "Then I'll have built something beautiful anyway. For Elizabeth, for the patients here who need a place to breathe, for myself, for the man I'm trying to become." "You're really not going to try to contact her?" "What would I say? I'm sorry I tried to control you." Words are cheap. I spent my whole marriage telling Elizabeth I'd be more present, and then I managed her death like a hostile takeover. If Melody ever gives me another chance, and that's a massive if, it won't be because I said the right words. It'll be because I became a different person." Tom was quiet for a long moment. "Then she'd be proud of you, Elizabeth. This is what she wanted. You living, really living." "I hope so." Caleb looked out over the garden, imagining it in spring. "I'm dedicating it to Melody, the Melody Garden, not to win her back, but to honor what she taught me. That beauty comes from patient care, not instant solutions. That growth can't be rushed or controlled. That the most valuable things in life require you to show up every day with dirty hands and no guarantees." "You're really going to invite her?" "I'm going to send an invitation. What she does with it is up to her." Caleb pulled the dried roses from his pocket, the ones from their last arrangement, now brittle and brown. "I'm going to bury these here, at the base of the new rose bushes." "That's morbid." "No. It's how composting works. Dead things feed new growth. The end of something becomes the beginning of something else." He knelt, dug a small hole, placed the dried petals carefully. "What we had is over, but maybe what we had can feed what comes next, even if that's just me becoming someone better." Tom helped him plant the new roses, heritage varieties that would bloom for decades if properly tended. They worked in companionable silence as the city lit up around them, and Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the peace of resolution, but the peace of acceptance. He'd failed, he'd learned, he was changing, and whether or not that ever meant anything to Melody, it meant something to him. Father O'Brien appeared as they were packing up, carrying thermoses of coffee. "Heard you were up here. Thought you could use sustenance." "How does everyone know what I'm doing?" "Hospital gossip. Better than any news network." The priest surveyed the garden. "It's coming along beautifully. Dorothy Chen says I'm doing most of it wrong." "Dorothy Chen's been telling everyone they're doing it wrong since 1995. If she's helping you, it means she approves." They sat on the bench, drinking coffee as twilight deepened. Below them, the city hummed with life. Up here, there was just earth and sky and the promise of things not yet blooming. "You dedicating this next month?" Father O'Brien asked. "If it's ready." "If I'm ready, and if she doesn't come." Caleb had been preparing for that possibility, had been sitting with the grief of it. "Then I'll have created something beautiful that helps strangers. That's not nothing." "No. It's everything." The priest stood, preparing to leave. "You know what the real miracle is. Not if she forgives you. It's that you're doing the work regardless. That's when you know you've really learned something." After they left, Caleb stayed until full dark, planting the last of the day's selections. His phone buzzed with work emails he'd ignored for hours, board members wanting decisions, deals requiring attention. The life he'd put on hold to kneel in dirt. He'd go back to it eventually, but for now, this mattered more. As he gathered his tools, he noticed something. A small card tucked under the water bucket. Dorothy's handwriting. Perennials means they come back, even after the hardest winters. Remember that. Caleb put the card in his pocket next to the invitation he'd been carrying for days. Simple cardstock, handwritten. No grand gestures or desperate pleas. Just, you taught me about growing things. Please come see what I've learned. No expectations, no obligations. Just, please come. Caleb. He'd mail it tomorrow, and then he'd come back here and keep working. Keep tending. Keep becoming someone who understood that the most important things in life couldn't be controlled, only cultivated, with patience, presence, and faith in unseen growth. The dried roses sat in Melody's workspace, accusatory and beautiful. She hadn't been able to throw them away. These flowers from the last arrangement she delivered to Caleb's apartment, now brown and brittle and somehow more honest than they'd been when fresh. You going to stare at dead flowers all day, or you going to help me with Mrs. Patterson's anniversary bouquet? Rosa's voice cut through Melody's spiral. She blinked, realizing she'd been standing motionless for who knew how long. Sorry, I'm here. You're not here. You've been half gone for 2 weeks. Rosa crossed her arms. And before you say you're fine, I'm going to remind you that I've known you since Sam was in diapers. I know what fine looks like on you, and this isn't it. Melody sank onto her work stool. I don't know what to do with this anger, Rosa. I'm so angry at him, but I'm angry at myself, for hoping, for believing, for almost trusting that someone could love me without trying to fix me first. You think that's what he was doing? What else would you call it? He tried to hire me, put me on his payroll, make me dependent on him. Or he saw someone he loved struggling and tried to help in the only way he knew how. Don't defend him. I'm not defending him. He was wrong, stupid even. But Mija, there's a difference between trying to control someone and trying to help someone while being too scared to do it right. Melody picked up the dried roses, their petals crumbling at her touch. Marcus used me, valued what I could do for him, not who I was. And when he didn't need me anymore, he left. That's what I've learned about love, Rosa, that I'm useful until I'm not. And you think Caleb is the same, isn't he? He saw my struggles and immediately tried to eliminate them, not stand with me through them, eliminate them. Like my life as it is isn't acceptable to him. Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then, have you considered that maybe you're so afraid of being used that you're seeing ghosts? That maybe, just maybe, Caleb made a stupid mistake because he's learning how to love someone after losing his wife? That maybe he's not Marcus, and you're punishing him for Marcus's sins? The words hit like a slap. That's not fair, isn't it? You ran, Melody. The second he did something that fit your narrative about being disposable, you ran. You didn't fight. You didn't explain. You just confirmed your worst fear and left. Because I was right. Were you? Or were you safe? Melody felt tears start, angry and hot. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to be left, to be traded in for a newer model, to watch someone you love realize you're not enough. You're right. I don't know that. But I do know what it's like to watch someone I love punish themselves for someone else's failures, and that's what you're doing. Marcus couldn't see your value. That's his loss. But you're making it yours by assuming everyone else will do the same. So what am I supposed to do? Call him, pretend the contract never happened? No. You sit with your anger. You figure out what part of it is about Caleb and what part is about Marcus. And then, if you decide Caleb deserves another chance, you tell him what you need, not what you're afraid of, what you actually need. Rosa left her alone, and Melody sat in her shop, surrounded by the beautiful things she created every day. Things that died, things that were temporary, things that marked moments but didn't stay. Maybe that's all she knew how to make. Beautiful temporary things. The anger came in waves over the next days. She'd be fine, creating arrangements, helping customers, picking up Sam from school, and then something would trigger it. A man in a suit, a Mercedes like Caleb's, someone ordering roses, and she'd be furious all over again. But Rosa's words kept echoing. You ran, you didn't fight. Had she? She started creating at night after Sam went to bed, not customer orders. Something else, something raw and honest and painful. Arrangements that represented grief stages, healing phases, the messy process of surviving heartbreak, surviving love, she called one, all thorns and blooms together, beauty and pain inseparable. After the storm showed delicate new growth emerging from broken branches, brave enough to hope, reached upward in defiant yellows and whites. Carrying on, mixed sturdy sunflowers with fragile baby's breath, strength and vulnerability coexisting. She photographed them, posted them, and something unexpected happened. They went viral, local lifestyle bloggers shared them. The Boston Globe did a feature, a gallery in the South End called about an installation. Orders flooded in from people who saw their own pain reflected in her work. The language of healing, she called the collection, and it became her alchemy, turning heartbreak into art, pain into beauty, anger into creation. The gallery's show opening was packed. Melody stood in a room full of strangers admiring her work, and for the first time in her life felt seen for something beyond her usefulness. This piece, brave enough to hope, it's extraordinary. The gallery owner stood beside her, champagne in hand. Would you consider doing a series? We have clients asking for commissioned pieces. Really? Really? You've tapped into something universal. Pain that transforms into beauty. Vulnerability as strength. People are responding to the authenticity. After the show, Rosa found her on the gallery's small balcony, looking out at the city lights. You did good, Misha. Your dad would be proud. I wish he could see this. The shop surviving. Me actually succeeding at something. He sees, and he knows. Rosa handed her a card from her purse. This came to the shop yesterday. Been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. The envelope was simple. Handwritten address. Melody's name in Caleb's careful script. I haven't opened it. Should I? That's up to you, but whatever's in there, you should know. He's been working on something. Hospital garden. Tom Fletcher came by the shop last week, mentioned it. Said Caleb's been there every day for a month, getting his hands dirty, learning to grow things. Melody's heart did something complicated. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. That man's doing the work. Whether you ever see it or not, whether you ever forgive him or not, he's changing. Rosa kissed her cheek. Now I'm going home. You decide what to do with that card. Melody stood alone on the balcony, holding the envelope, feeling its weight. Inside could be anything. An apology, an explanation, another attempt to fix things, or something else entirely. She opened it. Simple cardstock, handwritten note. No desperation, no grand declarations. Just an invitation to something called the Melody Garden dedication ceremony. And underneath, you taught me about growing things. Please come see what I've learned. No expectations, no obligations. Just, please come. Caleb, the Melody Garden. He'd named something after her, not to win her back. The tone was too humble for that, not to prove anything. The invitation too simple, just to honor what she'd taught him. Melody stood there for a long time, card in hand, city lights blurring through tears, and felt something she hadn't let herself feel in weeks. Curiosity. What had he learned? What had he built? And why did the thought of seeing it make her heart race with something that felt dangerously like hope? She took a picture of the card and sent it to Sam, who was spending the night at Grandma Patty's. His response came immediately. "The Melody Garden, that's your name. Can we go see?" Melody typed, "Maybe," then deleted it and typed, "Probably," then deleted that and typed, "Yes, we can go see." Because Rosa was right. She'd run, and maybe it was time to stop running, to stand still, to be brave enough to see what someone had built in the wake of their failure, even if it hurt, even if it changed nothing. Even if hope was the most dangerous thing she could allow herself, she was brave enough now, finally. The day before the dedication, Caleb couldn't stop checking details. Were the benches positioned right? Would the pathway be clear for people with mobility issues? Had he ordered enough refreshments? Was the plaque correct? "Stop fussing." Dorothy Chen whacked his arm with her gardening glove. "It's beautiful. You done good. What if she doesn't come? Then she doesn't come. Garden's still here, still beautiful, still serving people who need it." Dorothy pruned a rose bush with expert precision. "But between you and me, she'll come. Woman doesn't spend 8 years building a business based on the language of flowers without understanding what this means." What does it mean? Means you finally learned the lesson. That love is tending, not managing. That growth takes time. That the best things in life require dirty hands and daily care. She pointed at his calloused palms. Those hands tell a story now, different story than 3 months ago. Caleb looked at his transformed hands. Scarred, rough, evidence of work done. "Do you think it's enough, the change?" "Enough for what? To win her back?" Dorothy shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. But it's enough to make you someone better. And that's what matters." Father O'Brien arrived with Tom, both carrying boxes of programs, ready for tomorrow. Terrified, but yes, good. Terror means it matters. The priest surveyed the garden with approval. "This is holy work, Caleb. Literally. You've created a sanctuary." They did a final walkthrough. The pathway wound through native plantings and perennials that would bloom in rotation from spring through fall. Benches were positioned in sunny spots and shaded alcoves. A small fountain provided the sound of running water. And at the entrance, a brass plaque read, "The Melody Garden, where all are welcome to grow, not in honor of." Tom questioned, "No, she's not dead. She's not a memorial. This is named after her because she taught me about growth. It's active, present, like her. You really love her." "I really do, and I really screwed up. But I'm hoping." Caleb touched the roses he'd planted, the ones that would bloom from the compost of their ended relationship. "I'm hoping that even if we're over what we had mattered, that it taught me something essential. And this garden is the proof." That evening, he sat in the completed garden alone, watching the sun set over Boston. Tomorrow, dozens of people would come. Hospital staff, patients, board members, volunteers, the media, probably, and maybe Melody. His phone had stayed silent since he'd sent the invitation 2 weeks ago. No response, no confirmation, nothing, which meant she'd either decided not to come, or she was coming but didn't want to tell him. Either way, he'd know tomorrow. "Please let her see it," he whispered to Elizabeth, to God, to whoever might be listening. "Not because I deserve her forgiveness, but because she deserves to know that what she taught me mattered. That she changed someone, that her wisdom didn't fall on deaf ground." A text from Sam lit up his phone. They'd been exchanging messages occasionally. The boy checking in, Caleb being honest about missing them both. "Mum said we're coming tomorrow. I'm excited to see what you built. Does it really have my mom's name?" Caleb's hands shook as he typed back, "It does. Because your mom is the best gardener I know, even though she doesn't work with gardens. She knows how to grow people, how to help them bloom, and I wanted to honor that." "That's nice." She cried when she read your card. Good tears or sad tears? Both, I think. See you tomorrow. Both. Complicated tears. Human tears. That felt right. Caleb went home to his empty apartment, looked at the vase that had stayed empty since she'd stopped delivering flowers, and made himself a simple dinner. He'd learned to cook in these months. Nothing fancy, but real food instead of takeout. Another small change in a life full of them. Tomorrow would come regardless of whether he was ready. Tomorrow, Melody would either see what he'd built or she wouldn't. Either way, the garden existed. The change in him was real. The growth had happened, and that would have to be enough, even if it wasn't everything, even if it wasn't her. The hospital rooftop had been transformed. Melody stood at the entrance, Sam's hand tight in hers, and felt her breath catch. It was beautiful, not ostentatious, not over-designed, just peaceful, living. A place that invited you to breathe. Mom, it's so pretty. Come on. Sam tugged her forward, but Melody needed a moment, needed to absorb what she was seeing. Native grasses swayed in the October breeze. Chrysanthemums bloomed in golds and deep reds. Asters provided late-season purple. The pathway was smooth enough for wheelchairs, but natural-looking. Benches were positioned for both sun and shade. And everywhere were signs of careful thought, of daily tending, of someone who'd learned to listen to what growing things needed. You came. Caleb stood by the entrance plaque, and Melody's first thought was how different he looked. Thinner, older somehow, but also more present, more solid, like he'd been carved down to something essential. "Hi," it was all she could manage. "Hi," he smiled, tentative. "Thank you for coming. It means everything." Sam had already run ahead to explore, leaving them in awkward proximity. Melody looked at the plaque to avoid looking at him. The Melody Garden. "I hope that's okay. I wanted to honor what you taught me, about growth requiring patience and presence, about beautiful things needing space to become what they're meant to be. Caleb, you don't have to say anything. This isn't manipulation. I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness with a garden. I just wanted you to see that what you taught me mattered, that I learned, even if it was too late for us." Other guests were arriving. Hospital staff, patients in wheelchairs and walkers, families looking for a moment of peace. The ceremony would start soon. "Can we talk after?" Melody asked. "Really talk?" Hope flickered across his face. "Yes, of course." The dedication was simple and moving. The hospital administrator spoke about the importance of healing spaces. Father O'Brien blessed the garden. And then Caleb stepped up to speak. Melody watched him, this man she'd loved and left and listened. "This garden is dedicated to everyone who taught me that life requires tending, not managing. That growth happens in its own time, not on our schedule. That beautiful things need patient hands and daily care, not quick fixes and grand gestures." He looked directly at her. "Especially, this is for Melody Foster, who taught me the language of flowers, and taught me, without meaning to, the language of presence. She showed me that the most valuable things we give each other aren't things at all. They're time, attention, the willingness to sit with someone in their pain without trying to fix it." His voice cracked. "She showed me that when you really love someone, you don't try to eliminate their struggles. You stand with them through those struggles. You get your hands dirty. You do the daily work of tending, even when there's no guarantee of blooms, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Melody felt tears streaming down her face. "I failed at that. I tried to manage instead of be present. I tried to fix instead of support, and I lost something precious because I was too afraid to just show up as I was, too afraid to be vulnerable, too in love with control to understand that real love requires surrender." He held up his hands, showing his calluses. These hands used to sign contracts and close deals. Now they know how to hold living things without crushing them. That's what Melody taught me. And even if she never speaks to me again, I'm grateful for the lesson." The crowd applauded, but Melody barely heard it. She was moving toward him, through the crowd, pulled by something she couldn't name. They met in the middle of the garden, surrounded by people and plants, and the evidence of his transformation. "You really built this," she said, "with your own hands." Every weekend for 3 months, Dorothy Chen had to keep correcting my mistakes. But yes, I built it because you were right. I tried to buy your presence with a contract. I tried to eliminate your vulnerability instead of honoring it. And I needed to understand what it means to create something living that requires commitment without control. Why? If you thought we were over, why do all this? Because becoming someone better mattered regardless of whether you ever saw it. Because I needed to prove to myself that I could change. That I could learn to be present instead of managing. That I could do hard work with no guarantee of results. Sam appeared at Melody's elbow, tugging her sleeve. "Mom, there's a plaque with your name. Come see." They followed him to a small memorial area where Elizabeth's name was engraved beside a rose bush, and next to it, a new plaque read, "In gratitude to Melody Foster, teacher of growth and presence. You put me next to Elizabeth. She'd want you there. Her letter told me to find someone who made me want to be myself. That's you, Melody. You see me, not my money, not my status, just me. The broken parts and the trying parts." Melody touched both plaques, feeling the cool metal under her fingers. "I ran. I should have fought, should have explained why your offer hurt instead of just leaving. You had every right to run. I tried to control you with money." "That was unforgivable." "Was it, though?" She turned to face him. "You were scared. You saw someone you loved struggling, and you tried to help in the only way you knew how. It was wrong, stupid, even, but I don't think it was unforgivable." "Melody, I'm not saying we're okay. I'm not saying I'm ready to just pick up where we left off. But I'm saying I see what you've done here. I see that you've changed, and maybe we could start over. Slowly. Honestly, without contracts or grand gestures, just 2 people trying to figure out if we can be better together than apart." Hope bloomed across his face, tentative but real. "I would like that, very much. What do you need from me to make that possible?" "Honesty, vulnerability. Stop trying to save me and start trying to be with me. In my mess, in my struggle. Not fixing it, just witnessing it. I can do that. I want to do that." He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. "I'm sorry I tried to hire you. I'm sorry I made you feel like a project instead of a partner. And I'm sorry I ran without fighting. I'm sorry I let my fear of being disposable make me throw away something real." Sam had wandered off again, but now he came running back. "Caleb, there's a whole section just for butterflies. Did you do that?" "I did. Butterflies need flowers, and flowers need butterflies. Symbiotic relationship." "Like you and Mom?" The adults laughed through tears, and Sam looked pleased with himself. They walked through the garden together. Not a couple, not yet, but not strangers either. Something in between, something growing. As the sun set and other guests departed, they found themselves on a bench overlooking the city, Sam playing nearby, supervised by Dorothy Chen, who'd appointed herself unofficial grandmother. "What happens now?" Caleb asked. "Now we take it slow, we date properly, we talk about the hard things, we don't move in together or make big commitments until we're both sure. We protect Sam by being careful and honest, and we see if what we have can survive in real life, not just in a garden. Deal." He squeezed her hand. "For what it's worth, I'm all in. When you're ready, if you're ready, I want forever with you. Ask me in 6 months. If we make it that long, we'll make it. How do you know? Because you taught me how to tend things. And I'm very good at learning from excellent teachers. Melody leaned her head on his shoulder, watching Sam play in the garden that bore her name, feeling something settle in her chest. Not certainty, not perfection, just possibility. And maybe that was enough, for now, for today, for this moment of peace between the painful past and the uncertain future. Spring came slowly, then all at once. One day the garden was brown and dormant, and the next, the bulbs Caleb had planted in October were pushing through the soil in defiant greens and yellows. Crocuses, he told Sam, who visited the garden every week now. They're always first. Brave little things. Like Mom, Sam said matter-of-factly. She's brave too. 6 months had passed since the dedication, 6 months of slow, careful rebuilding, of Thursday night talks over wine where they said the hard things, of dates that didn't always end in kissing but always ended in honesty, of family dinners where Sam set the pace and both adults respected it. 6 months of Caleb learning to sit with Melody's financial stress without trying to solve it, of Melody learning to accept help without seeing it as control, of both of them practicing vulnerability like it was a muscle that needed exercise. It hadn't been perfect. There'd been fights, misunderstandings, moments where old fears surfaced and had to be talked through, moments where Melody wanted to run and Caleb wanted to manage, and they'd both had to breathe and remember what they were building. But they'd stayed, both of them, through the hard parts. And now it was April, and the garden was blooming, and Caleb had invited them for a special viewing. "Close your eyes," he told Melody as they reached the entrance. "Caleb, please, trust me." She did. Let him lead her through the now familiar pathways to a section of the garden she'd seen bare all winter. When he told her to open her eyes, she gasped. The bulbs he'd planted 6 months ago, the ones he'd tended through the coldest months with faith, but no guarantee. They were blooming, daffodils and tulips and hyacinth in riotous colour, exactly as he'd promised they would. "You remembered." "Of course I remembered. You told me the first day we met." Daffodils for new beginnings, yellow tulips for sunshine, blue irises for hope, things that come back every spring no matter how cold the winter. Sam was already running through the blooms, laughing, calling for them to look at this one and that one. But Melody stood still, taking in what this meant. "You planted these in October, when you didn't know if I'd ever speak to you again." "I planted them because they were right for the garden, because future patients would need them. But yes, I also planted them for you, because even if you never came back, I wanted you to know that what you taught me took root, that the seeds you planted in me bloomed." Melody turned to him, this man who'd learned to tend instead of manage, to be present instead of fixing, to show up with dirty hands and an open heart. "I love you," she said. "I tried not to, tried to protect myself, but I love you. And I think I'm finally brave enough to believe that you love me too, not because you need me, not because I'm useful, just because, he agreed. "And for the record, I am completely, thoroughly, terrifyingly in love with you. Both of you. And I know we said 6 months and no big commitments, but... He pulled a key from his pocket. Not a ring, a key. "My apartment has been basically empty for 6 months, because I'm always at yours. This is a key, an invitation, not to move in today, not even next month, but whenever you're ready, if you're ready. I want to talk about what forever looks like, what building a life together means, what family means. You're asking me to think about moving in together. I'm asking if you're ready to have the conversation. We don't have to decide today, but I wanted you to know I'm ready, whenever you are. If you are." Melody took the key, felt its weight, its promise. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." "What if I said yes tomorrow? Then we'd start planning, slowly, carefully, with Sam's input. Because this isn't just about us. It's about becoming a family, all three of us, and that's too important to rush. Sam chose that moment to crash into both of them, dirt-stained and grinning. Are you guys kissing again? Gross. Not yet, Caleb said. But probably soon. Fine, but can we get a dog? If we're going to be a family, we need a dog. The adults laughed, and Melody felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just happiness, not just hope, something deeper. Home, not a place, not an apartment or a house, but this feeling of being with people who showed up, who stayed, who got their hands dirty tending the garden of family, even when it was hard. Yes, she said suddenly, not to the dog yet, but to the key, to the conversation, to thinking about forever. Yes. Caleb's face transformed with joy. Yes. Yes. I'm not ready to move in next week, but I'm ready to believe we're building towards something real, something that lasts, something that doesn't end when things get hard. He kissed her there, in the garden full of spring blooms, while Sam made gagging noises and Dorothy Chen watched from her bench with a satisfied smile. And as the kiss deepened, as Melody felt herself surrender to hope and love and the terrifying beauty of new beginnings, she thought about flowers, about how the ones that lasted weren't the ones that never faced storms. They were the ones that had deep roots and strong stems and the resilience to bloom again after winter. That's what they were building. Not a hothouse romance that would wilt at the first cold wind, but something perennial. Something that would come back, year after year, deeper and stronger each time. Something worth tending. 1 year, exactly 1 year, since Melody had walked into a hospital room with the wrong flowers and stumbled into the right life. She stood in her shop at 5 a.m., preparing the arrangement she'd deliver today, not to Beacon Hill, but to the rooftop garden where this had all begun. A simple bunch of cosmos and forget-me-nots. The same flowers she'd brought to Elizabeth's grave a year ago, because today wasn't just their anniversary. It was the day Caleb had asked her to marry him, and the day she'd said yes. You're glowing again. Rosa appeared in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. That's what happens when you say yes to good men who do the work. I said yes. God, Rosa, I said yes. I know, Mija. You called me at 11 p.m. crying. I'm aware. They'd been in the garden last night, the 3 of them planting vegetables in the new section Dorothy had insisted they add. Sam had his hands in the dirt, chattering about his upcoming field trip. Caleb had been explaining to him how tomatoes grow, and Melody had been overwhelmed by the ordinary beauty of it all. That's when Caleb had said it, not with a ring, not on one knee, just sitting in the dirt, covered in soil, with Sam between them. I don't want to wait anymore. I want to marry you. I want to adopt Sam if he'll let me. I want to build a life that's messy and real and requires daily tending. Will you marry me? And Melody, dirty-handed and tear-streaked, had said yes. Sam had cheered, Dorothy had produced champagne from somewhere, Father O'Brien had materialized to offer congratulations. And they'd sat in the garden until dark, planning a future that felt as solid as the earth beneath them. Now, in the morning light, Melody finished the arrangement and loaded it into her van. The new van, purchased with profits from her gallery shows and corporate contracts. She'd done that herself, grown her business, earned her success, and Caleb had cheered every milestone without once trying to manage or control it. The rooftop was quiet when she arrived, just her and the garden and the city waking up below. She placed the flowers at Elizabeth's plaque first. "Thank you," she whispered, "for teaching him about presents, for leaving him letters, for loving him enough to want him to be happy after you. I'll take good care of him. I promise." Then she moved to the new section they'd added last month. Not a memorial, a celebration, a plaque that read, "To new beginnings and families formed by choice." May this garden witness many loves, many healings, many transformations. And beneath it, 3 sets of handprints in a concrete square. Caleb's large and scarred, Melody's medium and capable, Sam's small and still growing. A family. I thought I'd find you here. She turned to find Caleb climbing the stairs, coffee and pastries in hand. This had become their routine. Meeting at the garden before the world woke up, tending it together, starting their days with dirt under their nails and purpose in their hearts. Couldn't sleep, Melody admitted. Too excited, too nervous, too everything. Having second thoughts? God, no, just marveling at how we got here, from wrong flowers in a hospital room to this. She gestured at the garden, at the city, at the life they were building. It feels like a miracle. It wasn't a miracle. It was work. Your work, teaching me how to be present. My work, learning how to listen. Both our work, choosing each other every day even when it was hard. They sat on their usual bench, the one overlooking the city, and watched the sunrise paint the sky in golds and pinks. Sam asked me last night if he could call me Dad, Caleb said quietly. After the adoption goes through. What did you say? I said yes. And then I cried, which he found very embarrassing. Melody laughed, leaning into him. He loves you. You showed up. You stayed. You did the work of earning his trust. That matters more than biology. Your gallery show next month, the new collection. Are you nervous? Terrified but excited. This one's about hope instead of pain, about growth, about second chances and families that choose each other. I can't wait to see it. They were quiet for a moment, just existing together in the peace they'd built. Then Melody spoke. I want to do something for the wedding, instead of a traditional registry. Okay. I want to ask guests to donate to the garden fund to help maintain this space. And I want to plant a tree here, one that will grow for decades, so our grandchildren can sit under it someday and hear about how their grandparents met through a wrong delivery and learned how to grow things together. Caleb pulled her closer. That's perfect. What kind of tree? Oak. They're strong. They last. And they provide shelter for everything around them. Like family. Exactly like family. Sam burst through the rooftop door, still in his pajamas, followed by a laughing Rosa, who'd obviously been enlisted as getaway driver. Mom, Caleb, guess what? I lost my tooth. Look. He displayed the gap in his smile proudly. Does the tooth fairy come to rooftop gardens? They spent the morning there. Caleb teaching Sam about the butterflies starting to emerge, Melody deadheading spent blooms, Rosa making plans for the wedding feast with her usual enthusiastic excess. Tom and Diana arrived with bagels. Father O'Brien stopped by with a blessing. Dorothy Chen showed up to criticize everyone's pruning technique, and Melody watched her chosen family gather in the garden that had brought them together, and felt something settle deep in her bones. This was home, not the Jamaica Plain apartment she'd cling to out of pride, not Caleb's Beacon Hill penthouse that had always felt like a museum, but this community they'd built, this garden they tended together, this family formed by choice and effort and daily showing up. What are you thinking? Caleb asked, appearing at her elbow while Sam played with Rosa. That I was wrong. About being disposable. About being just a stopping point in other people's journeys. You were never disposable. I know that now, but I had to learn it. Had to watch you choose me every day. Had to become someone secure enough in her own worth to accept being chosen. And I had to learn that loving someone doesn't mean eliminating their struggles. It means being present for those struggles, getting my hands dirty, doing the daily work of tending. They looked at the garden around them, at the vegetables they'd planted, the flowers blooming in rotation, the fountain bubbling, the people laughing, at the evidence of what consistent care could create. Thank you, Melody said, for the wrong delivery that turned out right, for asking me to stay, for building this garden, for becoming someone who understands that growth can't be controlled, only cultivated. Thank you, Caleb replied, for teaching me the language of flowers, for showing me what presence looks like, for giving me a second chance, for believing I could change. Sam called for them, wanting to show them something he'd discovered in the butterfly section. They went to him, hand in hand, ready to admire whatever wonder he'd found, and as they walked through the garden they'd built together, past the memorial to Elizabeth, who'd started this journey by teaching Caleb about letting go, past the plaque honoring Melody's wisdom about growth, past the handprints that marked them as family. Melody understood something profound. The most beautiful things in life weren't the ones that came easily. They were the ones that required patience and presence and dirty hands, the ones that needed daily tending even when you couldn't see progress, the ones that survived winter and bloomed again in spring, deeper and stronger each time. That's what love was. Not a destination, not a contract, not a guarantee, just a garden, requiring care, promising beauty, teaching patience, and she was finally brave enough to tend it. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.